Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Bryce Simon is here with me. We're going to do a quick look ahead at the beginnings of a 2025 free agency class. How are these guys playing this season? What do we think some of the potential interesting outcomes could be coming into this 2025 offseason, if only because it does actually impact the upcoming trade deadline, who are free agents and who are not. Then we're going to talk about some quick news and notes, including the fact that Ja Morant is apparently going to try and not dunk for a while. And then finally, we're going to do an NBA draft question and answer session. So any of your questions about the 2025 NBA draft, come ask them. We will absolutely answer them. And we're super excited to do so. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? It's nice to have something in common with an NBA player like Ja Morant. At a certain point in my career, is like, you know what? My career is too fragile to continue to dunk and elevate the way I have been throughout the course of this. So I'm just gonna stop doing it. I'm gonna stick to layups. Maybe stay out at the 3-point line a little bit more. So I understand what Ja is going through as someone that was a high flyer myself.
So this is a good question, Bryce. You are somewhere in the ballpark of 6'6", let's say, right?
Yes. Yep.
When did you first dunk?
I did not dunk until between my sophomore and junior year of high school, actually, in the summer.
Okay. So did you have a later growth spurt into that range? Or
yeah, I continued to grow. I never had a big growth spurt. I was just like a couple inches between freshman, sophomore, junior. And then I really started to take the weight room seriously around that time as well. And you would never think it just by seeing me. I'm not a muscular person, but it changed the way I could play the game because I put on practical strength. And listen, I was obviously joking. My college career did not have very many dunks, but I had some pretty cool ones in high school. I caught some lobs. I did catch some bodies, caught one off the backboard in transition one time. So in high school, it was fun. In college, the level of athleticism was no longer adequate for that type of behavior.
This is a good thing that I just realized. I have never actually looked up to see if you have anything on Synergy.
I bet I don't on Synergy. I have the Real GM page, I think. I do not have. I bet I don't have Synergy.
So the Synergy numbers for you, you do have Synergy pages, but because it was 2008 and 2009, and I only have the American numbers. I don't have the JUCO numbers.
Yeah. No dunks at American.
Yeah, I don't have. I only have 3 games from back then.
Okay.
It's super. Synergy gets spotty. I think 2011-ish.
Okay.
With mid majors, something like that. So yeah, no, I don't have anything, unfortunately. I've no dunk stats for Bryce Simon.
I did not dunk at American. I had a couple at JUCO. At American, I very much became just a 3-point shooter. So I'm looking at my Real GM page. I had 232 career attempts overall, and 157 of them were threes.
Yeah, so I have 10 games here in your senior year, and you went.
I shot bad from 3.
The 10 games they have, you shot 8 for 14 from 3.
Okay,
so
they're the right.
There we go.
So to be clear for everybody, I did play my senior year on a torn ACL, legit torn after having tore it at the end of my junior year and going through surgeries and rehab and stuff like that. So my claim, probably the most accomplished thing I did was play Division I basketball on a torn ACL. And nothing I actually did is that impressive. Just the fact I was able to accomplish that feat is probably the most impressive thing I did on 2 NCAA tournament teams. I might add, we made it the big dance both years.
Yeah, that is true. I have a more important question though for you, Bryce. I watched a very, very important movie last night.
Okay.
A very essential movie. Have you ever seen the movie Bloodsport,
Oh,
Bryce?
of course.
See, this is one that I thought we'd be able to bond about.
Oh man, I just watched this like over the summer. It was randomly on, and listen, I was watching this movie way too young with my dad. My dad was letting me watch this movie way too young for the violence in this movie. Amazing movie. I love it.
Iconic. It's an iconic film.
Oh yeah.
It just makes me incredibly happy every time I watch it. It's just so over the top, and like the acting is frankly just not very good.
Bad.
But it's still like it still has this magic somehow where I think the storytelling is so good, and like the montages. You could put a montage in just about like anything, I feel like. And if it's edited right with the right kind of 80s, like, soft rock music over it, it's gonna be delightful. It's gonna be beautiful.
I mean, the idea this man puts a blindfold over his eyes to finish off a match is unbelievable. But he does avenge, the unfortunate, his friend and all. Like it's still awesome. As a kid, I didn't realize how ridiculous it was. Again, I watched it this summer. I was like, okay, this is a little dramatic, but I kept watching because it hooks you and it doesn't let you go.
It holds up. Shout out Chong Lee. I had to prepare because today is the start of Australian cricket's Bloodsport, where it is like being discussed in the media as if it's the most important test match. So I've explained test matches to you before, where there are 5 days match. It is the most important test match in a decade for Australia because India blew their doors off 2 weeks ago at home.
Okay.
And I had to be ready for this beautiful blood sport. You had people in the media this week, Bryce, saying to send some of these players down to like 2nd and 3rd grade cricket, which is like the equivalent of telling LeBron James, you're struggling right now. We got to send you back to college basketball.
I mean, so as you mentioned that, I'm coaching the little girls in, kindergarten through 2nd grade practice, and we're trying to talk about pivoting and not traveling and jump stopping and all of that. And, I'm getting frustrated because my daughter's traveling all over the place. And then I had to think about this week, I tweeted a video of a top 10 pick traveling 5 times before he put the ball on the deck. And I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. This is the sport.
Right.
This is what it is in 2024. There was a pretty funny one. Somebody's like, oh, guess he's perfectly ready for the NBA after that one. I was like, okay, that was well done, because NBA travels and all of that. But I didn't put that video out to like take a shot at that player.
Who was it? I don't know.
It was Nolan Traore. It was Traore.
Oh yeah, he does that stuff all the time. Yeah.
Here was my point.
Traore has been quite bad this year. To be clear.
I do not understand how a player can allow himself to do that or herself to do that. It would feel so. I don't walk through the gym not playing a game and don't dribble the basketball. It just feels awkward to me. It feels unnatural. I just don't understand how players do this sometimes, where they'll take 4 or 5 steps or switch pivot feet. And I'm like, how does that even feel natural to do? I do not understand.
Yeah. No, that's really funny. That's really, really funny that you did that. Okay. Let's get started. Let's talk about NBA level basketball.
Let's do it.
So the idea I had here was let's just kind of dive in and talk about a few potential NBA free agents and talk a little bit about just free agency in general this upcoming year. The class is interesting. And I do think this matters to talk about now because we are 10 days, before the NBA trade period realistically opens up, because a number of players will be eligible to be traded on December 15th after having signed contracts this past offseason. It opens up a lot more in terms of the market. It makes it much easier to construct trades. And I think it's important to kind of talk about a few of these things because a lot of these guys who are free agents this year, their teams might be looking to move at the end of the day. Brandon Ingram is like kind of the prime example. We'll talk about Brandon Ingram in a minute here, but just as like a quick little brief on the players that like really matter who could be available. LeBron has I think a player option.
Correct.
Kyrie Irving as a player option. I would imagine that's going to be an opt-out, if only to sign a longer deal with Dallas potentially. But there's no reason for him to opt into that player option. He should at least be opting out and re-signing. James Harden has a player option. Jimmy Butler is extension eligible all year this year, unlike, Kyrie, LeBron, Harden, because these guys are in the second years of their contracts, basically, or in LeBron's case, the first year. In Harden's case, I guess, as well. Butler can sign an extension all year, but it feels like they're going to try and maybe play that out. That's kind of been the idea, it's felt like, the whole way. Brandon Ingram's in the final year. Fred VanVleet has a team option that, could be picked up, could be declined into a longer-term deal with Houston. A lot of optionality there for the Rockets, where they'll be able to kind of control his destiny a little bit. Myles Turner is an unrestricted free agent, and that Indiana situation is not going super great right now. Brook Lopez is an unrestricted free agent. He's been critical for Milwaukee.
Yes.
Alex Caruso, Bruce Brown, D'Angelo Russell, anybody else that you tracked that you were like?
Naz Reid, I think, is interesting.
Naz Reid's an important one. Has a player option. Yeah.
Player option for this. Yeah, that's probably about it in this realm.
So the guy I kind of want to start with is LeBron. And look, I don't think we're close to where like the Lakers should be entertaining trading LeBron yet, because even though they've lost 6 of 8 and their performance last night inspired me to, even though I had gone golfing in like the morning and was still wearing like workout gear, basically, to go live and talk through the catastrophic Lakers performance where they gave up 134 to Miami in that game. It was seriously just like a disastrous defensive performance. There's no other way to put it. I don't think we're at the point yet where they should be entertaining anything like moving LeBron. Also, though, these last 8 games, and look, like they're in the middle of it. Last night was like a 3rd and 4 nights, out on the road. They still have one more road game against Atlanta, I think, in a couple days. Maybe tomorrow night, actually, now that I think about it. There are reasons that you can come up with. There are different things that you can say in terms of why this is the way it is. But if it continues down the road it's going down now, I do think they actually should like entertain, do we want to continue to go down this road with LeBron? Because the issue for LeBron is that he has not been anywhere near as good this year as he has been previously. And you can look at the counting numbers if you want, and you can say, oh yeah, like he's still averaging, what do we got here? I'm trying to pull it up right now. He's averaging 22, 9, and 8.
Yeah.
There's every reason to say, yes, this guy's still a star player. He's still this, he's still that. What I will say, though, is this. If you look at his on-off numbers, with LeBron James, they're a minus 8.1 on the court this year. Without LeBron James, they're a plus 6.5. With LeBron James and Anthony Davis on the court, they're a minus 8.47 points per 100 possessions. With LeBron James on the court, they are a minus 7.5 points per 100 possessions. With just Anthony Davis without LeBron on the court, they're a plus 7.9 right now. And you can look at this like rotationally and say, okay, like they have AD come in and he's still got like Reeves out there a decent amount of the time. And he's still got a couple of the guards sometimes it's Russell, right? But that defensive number is kind of the key to me. When LeBron has been out there with Anthony Davis, the Lakers are giving up 121 points per 100 possessions. With LeBron out there by himself without AD, they're still giving up like 120 points per 100 possessions. With AD without LeBron, they're giving up 111 points per 100. And look, part of this is undeniably opponent 3-point percentage and a little bit of luck, a little bit of shot luck for opposing teams. With AD and LeBron out, teams are shooting 31% from three so far. But here's the thing. When you actually watch the Lakers, you understand why they're giving up so many open corner threes. And it's because a lot of the time, LeBron isn't really helping anywhere and he's kind of standing still, and it ends up creating situations where they get into rotation and the ball just swings across the court. And I don't want to totally blame LeBron. Like I went on a whole spiel last night, kind of breaking down everything that's going on with the Lakers, where it's point of attack defense from the guards. Like D'Angelo Russell is not good at that. Austin Reeves has not had a great point of attack season at the very least. He knows where to be more than D'Angelo does, which is good. But like Dalton Connect is just bad across the board defensively right now. I don't really think there's anything he does well defensively at this stage. Gabe Vincent's just small. So it creates these situations where they're constantly giving up paint touches. They're constantly giving up easy kickouts, easy opportunities. And LeBron isn't really helping that. So I get why Jason Timpf today on Hoops Tonight went scorched earth and he was like, let's just trade LeBron and AD. And I love Jason for it. He's the best. Like truly just like a good friend of mine. And I'm so like happy he just went like fully nuclear. It's the best. But also, I don't think we're there yet. I would like to see like they're going to have to get to a point though where they make a decision on do we buy or do we sell?
Yeah.
They have to do one or the other. They definitely can't win a title with the team constructed as it currently is. Like there's a 0% chance, I think. And that was always my point. Like why I've been higher on the Lakers is I liked the way the AD particularly was playing early in the season. I liked a few of the things I saw schematically from JJ Redick offensively, but you have to go out and you have to get defenders. You have to go out and get like literally probably a center who can stem the tide as a backup center. And you have to go out and you have to get at least one, maybe two good point of attack defenders. And one of those could be Jared Vanderbilt when he comes back, you know, at some point, but you have to do something if you're the Lakers. Otherwise, you have to sell, I think. And selling involves, to me, moving LeBron at some point. So that's why this is an important conversation to have, in my opinion. Free agency, talking about these guys, LeBron's potential impending free agency is a huge factor here moving forward for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. What does selling look like for them? And it has to be then it's built around AD and Austin Reeves and rookie Dalton Connect, and you just sell off everything else. Is that what it looks? I wondered today, what is LeBron's ultimate role? Like, what's his best role at this point in his career? Because he is 40 years old and the energy isn't there as much for him. And so if we look at this, where would he go? What would he do? Like, where's the team? Like, is this the Warriors thing? Is that what this is? Is it's like the go put him on the Warriors and he fits in there and makes it work there for another couple of years? And is it trade him or does it happen this offseason? Like, we assume he turns down that player option. Is that what we think he would do?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I was him, I might look into it. I mean, maybe he just wants to stay with the Lakers because they drafted Bronny and like he's happy there. Yeah. Or maybe he could envision a circumstance where he moves somewhere else and brings Bronny in a trade with him, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying that like they should look into this yet. I think we're a minute away from that. I think we need to like try and kind of figure out where they stand. I think that this is a conversation for 35 games into the year, not 22 games into the year, especially when they're still 12-10, right? But LeBron has the ability to be a free agent this year, and they need to kind of figure out how they're going to handle it. I mean, there are teams that would take LeBron. Like if you're Memphis, you absolutely try and get LeBron, right?
Yeah.
Like no questions to me, because they need like half court offensive execution, and he can at least do that right now. Like he can help them, I think, on that front. But like again, the idea of the Warriors is interesting. There are a few other teams, but the Lakers need to figure out where they're going to go moving forward. Are they going to buy or are they going to sell? One of the two things has to happen here. And LeBron is not entering in a particularly positive walk year.
Do you think the only way a team gets LeBron is via trade, or do you think he would actually walk this offseason and like hit free agency? I guess that's where my interest is with this conversation. You know what I mean? Is if a team wants him, or if he wanted to make a move or whatever, does he kind of force the trade at the deadline? Because he has the no trade clause also from that deal, right?
I mean, here's the funnier example of what this could look like to me is imagine if he does leave in free agency and wants to continue playing with Bronny. The Lakers still have Bronny's rights.
Yeah.
So the way that something like this in my mind could work is he just decides to leave, but the team that and says like, I'll sign for the mid-level or sign for whatever. Like I have enough, I have more money than I'll ever use. Like it's fine. It's whatever. Right. The team that wants me has to trade for Bronny.
Yeah.
And to do that, the Lakers can go, okay, 2 first-round picks for Bronny.
Yeah.
And if you're another team, you're like, hey, we're getting LeBron. It's going to be a financial free-for-all. Like, we're super happy about that. If that locks in Bronny, it's kind of similar to the Kawhi Leonard deal.
That's what I said.
Right?
I was just about to bring that up. It's why OKC got the King's ransom for Paul George, right? Because
correct.
It wasn't just getting Paul George. It was the Clippers were going to get Paul George, and by getting Paul George, they lock in Kawhi Leonard.
If you get Bronny, you lock in LeBron James.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun one, right?
Yeah.
Like that's actually a way to play this out throughout the course of the year, potentially. And then later on, or maybe LeBron is just like, he's like, this is all a circus. This is hard. Like, let's not do this again. But if he does want to continue to play with Bronny, which could be a thing, I don't know. That sounds like an interesting solve across the board for everybody.
I mean, it's the opposite of what we thought might happen in the draft, right? A team was going to draft Bronny and hold him hostage of the Lakers. And now we're looking at it from the opposite perspective. I just continue to find myself going, can the Lakers make a move that puts LeBron in a better role with them? You know, like what is there a move there? You said they have to either be buyers or sellers. So if they're buyers, if they get that point of attack defender, if they get that backup big man, does that then put him in a role where he does make sense? He can be more effective in his age 40 season. And if they're sellers, if I still like, I wonder what the team is that he makes sense on at age 41, where the defense is depleted. The passing is still unbelievable. The scoring, I would assume, continues to trend down just like it did from last year to this year. 3-point shooting is going to be a little bit sporadic. It was awesome last year, not so much this year, but he can still pass. He still grabs rebounds. All of those things, I'm sure there's a team that would make sense out there, but I just don't think it's as easy to take LeBron James and just, I mean, you already get rid of 75, 80% of the league because he's only going to play for a contender or a team he thinks is going to contend. And then of those teams, how many of them have the means to add him? And does he make sense on the roster and the play style and all of that? I realize it's LeBron freaking James, but I don't think the amount of
I have the team this offseason that would be really fun.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Houston.
Okay. So you let Fred walk, you turn down that, and what's their cap situation? I assume
look, I'm assuming that if he does this, it would be for cheaper. Like it wouldn't be for like a full max or whatever. Maybe it would have to be, but like Houston has the defensive infrastructure to make this work. They have a need for like a real half court shot creator on offense. Like, look, this is all pie in the sky bullshit. We're talking right now. So like we should probably move on, but like, I mean, God, if you put LeBron on Houston and he had the insulation defensively to be able to do something, like, that's an intriguing one to me.
Yeah.
That's a very intriguing one.
That's
okay.
That's a more creative name than I brought up.
Let's go to Miami now and talk about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's contract situation has felt very strange the entire year. I think he has been much better than LeBron this year. If you look at their numbers, you know, they are a plus 1.2 team with him on or him off the court. They're a plus 4.8 team with him on the court. He's averaging 19, 5 and 5, shooting 55, 36, 78. He has missed, I want to say, like 7 or 8 games, something like that this year. No, he's only missed 5, I guess.
5.
They're a bit lower than what I thought in terms of game played. But I'm super interested to see what his market looks like. I mean, this could be like another Houston idea on like a shorter term deal, I feel like. But it does, like, it just feels like this works in Miami. But if you're Miami, you know, if he's going to play 3/4 of the games every year, which it basically has been for the last 3 years, 57, 64, 60 games, you know, he plays right around 3/4 of the games. Does that work for you? Do you have enough talent to make up for that, him missing those 25 games per year, and still allow you to be a contender in the way that you want to? Because this could be another circumstance where they have a chance to kind of get out of this situation and open things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is no. They're 500 right now, and they're having an insane season thus far from Tyler Hero. I mean, Tyler Hero has been really, really good, at least offensively. You know, shooting 47, 42, 86. You watch them, and I've watched multiple games where he just goes crazy. Like when he gets it going, he really gets it going, averaging almost 5 assists. You know, like Bam is what he is defensively. There's no questions about that. The offense isn't a number 1, number 2 option, run your offense through him type of stuff. Rozier looks like he's headed down. Robinson is the floor spacer. I don't know that any of these young guys like Jaquez or Jovic or Larson or anybody like none of those guys are taking the reins of this stuff. So I don't think it's good enough. I guess my thing always is, okay, if you let him walk, or, you know, if he decides to walk, I guess it's a little bit more his option. But what else do you do if you're Miami? What's the play then if he does walk in free agency? So I don't know that I love and really believe in this team as constructed. I would like to know and be able to see the path without him. I think I'm ready for that, to be honest with you, Sam. I think I am ready for the Heat to go down a path without Jimmy Butler, but I don't know that I foresee exactly what that's going to look like.
So in the summer of 2026, they can get up to, assuming the cap rises by 10% again and gets up into like the 70 million or $170 million range, with Bam, Hero, Khalil Ware, Jaquez, Jovic's restricted free agency rights, and Pele Larson. They can get up in the ballpark of like 70-ish million in cap space. Something like that. So they can get like real max cap space if they want to for 2026. So it would involve them taking like 1 year off if they decided to go a different direction. They tend not to do that. Like, this organization does not like taking years off. And you'd be doing that with Bam Adebayo, who would be 28 next year. So he'd really be contending at like 29 again, assuming that you can win in free agency in 2026 for somebody, or if you can potentially trade for somebody would be the other idea here. You know, if somebody comes free in the next couple of, really the next like 18 months, it would have to be maybe like 20 months, I guess it would be. Maybe that's an out. Maybe that's something that Miami, particularly in a state with no state income tax, in Miami where players love to go in the offseason and love to live, you could convince me that works.
Yeah, they also, it's important to know, so what, the OKC pick is top 14 protected and then goes to OKC if not conveyed the next year, I believe. I'm a little fuzzy on the protections here on this one. But point being, I don't know that they have full control over their picks. I'll have to look at that a little bit closer.
They don't.
Yeah, they do not. So
the other thing is that they owe Charlotte a pick for the Terry Rozier deal.
Yeah, and that one. So after the OKC stuff is figured out, then the Charlotte stuff has to get figured out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just hard to imagine Miami, like you said, taking a year off. So that's what's hard with this. How many how many games do you win next season if Butler moves on and you essentially kind of run it back with this team? I don't think you completely tank out behind Hero and Bam and, but it's not going to be good. You're not really competing in the East. But my thing, like Butler's 35 and I start to get nervous. We've even seen it with LeBron, like the guy that is the most ageless of the ageless. And I realize that's 40, but we're seeing it catch up to him. It's going to catch up to Jimmy Butler. And I think it has a little bit already. So it's like, what do you do? Like, are you going to extend him out if you're Miami? Do you want to sign up are you in the Jimmy Butler business for the next 4 more years, even if it's at a decent number? I don't know that I am if I'm the Heat. So I think I'm looking for the outs and the next path, whether that's trading him at the deadline. Like you said, that's why this is important conversation, or figuring something out this offseason.
And he's been I think he's been good.
Sure.
This year, he's been quite good, I think. And he's never been like a regular season stats guy, right?
Sure,
There's a reason that, even though in spite of all of his incredible play over the last 5 years or whatever, he's only made 2 third team, or no, he made second team All NBA in 2023 as well. But in the last, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, he's only made, a second team All NBA and a 2 third team All NBAs.
Yeah.
Even though I think we all think that in the last 7 years, he's probably been one of the 10 best players in the NBA, right? Over that stretch. Not to say that he has been he's one of the 10 best players in the NBA now, or was last year, or, honestly, he might've been the year before, but over that run, I think you would be hard pressed to find 10 players who have brought more value to their organization than Jimmy Butler has.
Fair. But also, we just did our quarter of the season awards and didn't even bring up his name.
Yeah, because he missed a bunch of games.
He did, but he's still qualified. I mean, he still had played. I mean,
Point.
He probably played 13 games. I'm just saying,
look, he's averaging 18, 5, and 5 right now. He's not a top 15 player right now in the regular season.
Exactly. That's all I'm saying is he's good. He's always better than what his numbers show, especially in the regular season. I'm just saying we're not talking about him as a top 15 player in the NBA at this point in his career. And this team needs one of those guys, in my opinion. Yeah. So what is the path to that? It's not him anymore. It's not going to get better because he's 35 years old. So I think if you're Miami, you have to start looking at life beyond him. If you don't have a path to that, then sure, maybe you bring him back for another year. Life with him is probably better than life without him and no replacement or no plan. But if I'm them, I'm looking at life built around Bam Adebayo. I'm probably a little more Tyler Hero than other people are, but at the very least, Bam, and start building around that.
Well, Bam, Jovic, Hawkes,
and the young
Kelly
guys.
Larson, the young guys are interesting.
Khalil Ware, hopefully, and
Khalil Ware, yep, yeah. So here'd be my final question on Jimmy Butler before we get to a quick ad break. What does he get in free agency? What does his next contract look like? It depends totally on how he finishes the year, I think, entirely. You could convince me it's $30 million a year. You could. I don't think it'll be a max, right? I don't see anybody doing a full 2-year max for Butler at this number.
My first thought was 30. That's probably low.
35, maybe.
I mean,
the other key is who has money. There aren't a lot of teams this summer that have real spending power.
So that was my thing with free agency in general is how many of these, if these guys actually moved, would have to be sign and trades of some variety? Is that what we were? And I know those get tricky too, making the money work. I would be curious how some of these guys would get to the next team if they actually get to free agency, because it's not going to be straight cap space, and the guys we're talking about aren't falling into the MLE.
Yeah.
30 is probably too low. Like it probably is 35 or 40 still based on
but to get that money though, he probably has to be in the with the team that pays him that money this summer. Maybe it is like a 1-year deal with Miami, or maybe it's a trade in the spring here where he gets to the team that is willing to commit money to him, right? That's not impossible either. Okay. Quick ad break before we move on through the rest of these names here. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. If you think, I would keep bringing up my guy, Trey McBride, because Trey McBride is a reception machine for the Arizona Cardinals. If you think he's going to go over his yardage total this weekend, you can make that pick and more in 60 seconds or less and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long over on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code Game Theory, and you will get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Second sponsor today, Duer. I talk at length about how much I love my Duer jeans. They're so comfortable. They're versatile. You can wear them in different situations. They're stylish. They're lightweight. Trust me, if you haven't ordered a pair of Duers yet, now is the time to do so. They have styles that can be worn all year round. Their performance denim and lifestyle apparel is built for doing. There's something for everyone for any occasion. And plus, Duer is committed to sustainability. They use recycled materials and plant-based fibers whenever possible for natural breathability, softness, and moisture absorption. These are clothes we can feel great about purchasing. You know that I absolutely love my Duer jeans. Go use that code Game Theory over at Duer, and you're going to get 20% off at shopduer.com. That's shop, DUER.com/Game Theory. Shopduer.com/Game Theory. It's a fantastic, fantastic set of jeans, guys. I can't emphasize it enough. Okay.
What was the James Harden? What's Harden's? I was looking at things. I'm like, man, 30 seems low. So Harden got what, 2 for 70?
About that, yeah.
Okay, I think 30 is too. I think 35 to 40 is probably more realistic. But in this, with where the cap's going, if somebody can find the way to make it work, like in the cap and acquire him and all of that. So okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's kind of what makes it tricky, right? Like, if you try and figure out who's going to have the money, there aren't like a crazy number of teams. Like Brooklyn is going to have money, but Brooklyn is not going to go out and pay for Jimmy Butler.
Right.
Like that doesn't fit their timeline. I'm trying to think like anybody else that like really, really stands out. I think Washington could have some money this summer.
Yeah, just looking at Spot Track, I don't know exactly how they figure this. This is their cap space projected practical. Brooklyn, Washington, Brooklyn way above everybody else. Washington, and then it looks like New Orleans, I assume that's with Ingram just coming off the books. Charlotte, San Antonio, Detroit, Houston, like all around 20 to 30. And this is all projections. I don't know exactly how they figure their projections and their estimates.
Yeah, like Houston can open up money. Theoretically could be a spot for some of these guys, but like they also have the Fred VanVleet money, plus they have Jalen Green and Şengün's money coming on the books. You could theoretically try and move those guys if you want to, but like they could get to a significant amount of money. Washington is just not going to be in the market for a Jimmy Butler. The Pelicans, I don't think that they're there because the Pelicans have paid Trey Murphy. So I think that they would not have enough to actually do this, like in practicality.
Yeah.
The Spurs are another team.
Yeah, that's the one that stood out a little bit.
the Spurs can get to like a pretty real amount of money just by maneuvering a little bit if they want to. And some of this will change before the deadline will adjust all of this as well in terms of making this whether or not teams have money or not.
I bet the New Orleans one isn't counting Zion because like there
could be.
And I'm not saying that like Spot Track is saying that they're not going to, but like I think it's not guaranteed. So I wonder if it automatically doesn't count non-guarantees or whatever, or like, how they have to put it into their system. So some of the stuff happens automatically. So that might be why it's showing the Pelicans. The Spurs were the only other team here that kind of made sense, or outside the Rockets, which we've talked about.
And maybe that does work, right? Like maybe the Spurs decide, we want to have like 2 years of Jimmy Butler as like a stopgap while we keep, competing with Victor Wembanyama and adding talent around him for the longer term. I think they're probably going to be more in the mix of like trying to get stuff done down the road.
Yeah.
That is more of a longer term option with Victor, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. Harden, to me, it feels like is another situation like Jimmy Butler where I don't know who would pay him. So it probably just makes sense to either opt in or sign a, longer deal with the Clippers if you want to do that. Cause he's been pretty good for the Clippers this year. He hasn't been like all NBA quality, but like he's been pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that they're feisty. Like that's what
totally.
The Clippers are gonna, I don't think teams will want to play them in the playoffs because we've talked about how they defend. We've talked about Zubats. Norman Powell, you, I think, had as one of your most improved players, or at least on your list.
I did.
And I think Harden, like, if I'm James Harden, I'm extremely happy right now. I feel like he's getting to play the role he ultimately wants to play, right? He is the focal point of the offense in terms of he always has the ball in his hands, and he has a big-time scorer next to him, and he doesn't really have to guard that much because they have so many other good defenders. If I'm him, I'm signing right back up for that and continuing to do it.
And that's how I feel about Kyrie Irving as well.
100%.
Kyrie has found the spot in
Yes.
Dallas. It's a perfect place for him.
Oh, yeah.
With Kyrie and Luka on the court, they beat opponents by 7. With just Kyrie on the court, they beat opponents by 5. With just Luka on the court, they beat opponents by 8. Like, the distribution there is perfect to me. He's able to stem the tide when Luka's out of the game, which is something that they struggled with for years with Luka, but he also complements Luka perfectly well. They have a great defensive infrastructure for him, and he's improved defensively as well. I think that has gone way under the radar.
Yes.
His defensive ability and just like effort and engagement has been really, really good in Dallas to this point. So to me, like, I don't want to spend a lot of time on Harden and Kyrie because I feel like they're in their best places. Right. And we don't need to consider a lot of different avenues for them. Yeah, Brandon Ingram, I mean, that feels like the total wild card to me, where I have no idea. You could convince me that like Brooklyn sees him as an interesting option because he's still a little bit younger. You could convince me that like they don't want anything to do with him.
Yeah.
He's such a polarizing player league wide. So someone asked this question for our NBA draft Q&A earlier, and I'm curious to get your kind of sentiment on it. They asked a question basically like, how does the fact that there will be 2 expansion teams theoretically entering the NBA soon impact the value of guys like Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram, et cetera, primary scorers who might not be quite good enough to be like real primary scorers for good teams? Does that add value to them because automatically they're just like somewhere between 4 and 6 additional slots in the league to be a primary scorer, and thus there are just more teams that need them, right? And I kind of think that that's true in all honesty.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's saying like all of a sudden there's a little bit excess of those guys, so it's hard for them to find a home. Now you add 2 of these guys, and it's okay. Well, we're trying to figure out like LaVine's not the primary guy on a championship team, but this other team that's middle of the pack or a little bit lower, now they have a need for that, so they go get. I could see that. Like, it's probably true for every position, right? Like you add a couple teams. I think this is why we all feel like expansion needed to happen, is there is enough talent to hold on to it. So that tracks to me. If we didn't think there was an excess of guys, I think we'd be coming on here going, no, don't add more teams. These teams are talent depleted as it is. And that's just simply not the case. I mean, you look at some of these teams and what they're bringing off the bench and what some of these guys can do. And it's incredible that, that they have that type of depth. So yeah, it will be interesting. It will be good for those type of guys, because those teams will want at least some guys that can get buckets.
Yeah. Look, I wanted to shout out who it was. Shout out Jump Like Shay over on Twitter. Because I thought that was kind of an amazing question, in all honesty.
Yeah.
That really, really made me think about, okay, like maybe that changes the value. The problem for somebody like Zach LaVine or John Collins is, right, that expansion's probably not happening for 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And those guys might be just like a little bit too old at that point to really take advantage of it. But Ingram might be young enough to where, he becomes more valuable in that circumstance. So like Anthony Simons might be the perfect example of this, where he's definitely young enough to potentially take advantage of it and be like more of a primary scorer. That will just, you have to have them. Even like expansion draft wise, like even say a couple really, really good ones go to those younger teams. I mean, it opens up more opportunities for good teams that need primary scorers as well. So
yeah, I mean, Cam Thomas is going to be on his next contract. Maybe
that's a great name for this.
He's another one that could eventually then get moved, end up there. But yeah, I mean, that's the point is, okay, like everybody wants the Bulls to trade Zach LaVine, including us, but eventually the Bulls have to replace that scoring also. And so, if there's more teams to send them to and they're taking those type of players. But yeah, back to Brandon Ingram. I don't know. We've struggled with the same thing in terms of his play style. Where does it fit? How does it fit? Where can he go and provide that type of value, that role that just fits perfectly? And it's just really hard to pinpoint that team, because it's not the primary option, but you almost feel like he has to be the primary option. And so slotting him in is tough, finding that team that makes a lot of sense. And then again, who's the team this offseason that wants to pay him that money? And so, like you said, the Brooklyn, are they signing up for that? It doesn't seem like they would. Houston, I don't think so. San Antonio, like where's the money coming from?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Corey B just asks straight up, should the Pelicans just re-sign Ingram and figure out what to do with Zion, or trade all the older guys and start over? I think they should probably move Ingram, but that's because I have, become not an enormous fan of Ingram in terms of his fit on that roster, because the younger guys, Zion, Trey, and Herb, they all play the role that Ingram should be playing on the wing, right? Realistically, you probably need to commit to, and DeJounte as well, who they've just, obviously traded for, and traded Dyson Daniels and 2 picks for him. Like, you need to figure out how all of those guys kind of fit together. I think Ingram is the kind of square peg in the round hole there among that group. Realistically, I also think DeJounte doesn't really work. The thing that I love that the Pelicans did last year was just weaponize Zion as like a point guard.
Yeah.
That was basically every time the Pelicans have leaned into this idea of just letting Zion be like a primary-ish ball handler. That's been when their most fun moments have come. Think back to like the Stan Van Gundy year where JJ Redick and him were running all sorts of crazy ghost actions and stuff. Think about this past year where he averaged like 24, 6 and 6 over the, whatever it was. I think those might be like slightly off, but where he was really, really good. I would rather lean into that than have DeJounte and have CJ. CJ, one of DeJounte and CJ works. Honestly, I think CJ works a little bit better because of the shooting, but I would rather lean into Zion at point, Because the other piece of that that's interesting is that I think it's actually, if you don't trust Zion to stay healthy, if you think that's going to be an issue longer term, it's easier to find star point guards. Like there's a flux of those guys. Like you could trade for D'Angelo Russell if you want to as a stopgap, I'm sure, on a expiring deal, right? You can trade for Zach LaVine, who can play on the ball quite a bit. You can find those players if Zion gets hurt again. And if like you just become a team that is screwed. Realistically, if you're committed to Zion at the end of the day, you're committed to playing the roller coaster game with his injuries. And whether or not they should do that, I think is an open question. Like if you're the Nets, like you absolutely try and do Zion and pair him with like whatever young star rookie you get in this upcoming draft. Like that would be really fun. But to me, I'm moving Ingram almost certainly here and getting back what I can get back, because I don't like the fit with him and all the wings. I don't like the fit with him and DeJounte. It just feels very clunky across the board to me. And I know we haven't gotten a chance to see that a lot this year because of all the injuries that they've had, but I would prefer to see something different moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it's they just move on from him. I don't know that you're going to get a great return. But if he's not in the plans and you don't want to pay him, and you go to free agency and then you take a chance there. I mean, I guess again, I guess that would be the other play is you could let him, figure out a sign and trade, and maybe you feel like you can get more value somehow in that than just trading him at this deadline. I wonder what ends up being there. I wonder what his value is. I do, because I don't know how a team would value him. I just don't on that expiring contract.
I'm not either.
And that's, Pistons fans bring it up all the time. And it's like,
no, absolutely not.
And even if you liked it, as this team continues to look like they are going to need a wing bucket getter at a certain point, but I think of a different archetype, what are you going to pay him? Like, that's what it continues to come down to for me is what is he going to demand?
And this comes back to something that Sham said on McAfee earlier this week. Basically, Ingram has switched representation. He went with Clutch. And it's gearing up for either an extension or a trade. And the reason for that, I think, is because Clutch recognizes that his market, he needs to get to the place now.
Yeah.
That allows him to get paid.
Yep.
Because again, if he hits free agency, as we just laid out, there aren't a lot of teams. Aren't a lot of teams. Rohan Ajarapu. I think there's a question from this guy later on for the NBA draft stuff. Maybe Portland swaps Ayton for Ingram so they clear salary and New Orleans gets a big. Okay. That's look, I would want a pick from Portland to do that, in all honesty, because I wouldn't want the Ayton deal for the extra year. But that's not terrible if you get the pick back too. And if you're the Blazers, like you're moving a pick just to kind of open up the center position a little bit as well for Klingon.
And then Portland just lets him walk.
Or moves Grant and keeps him. Depends if you can get anything for Grant, maybe. If you can get something for Jeremy Grant, like in free agency or in a trade, maybe you do that. You do this thing for Ingram, and that's kind of how you think of it. There could be like a 3-team deal there, kind of all around that could work for people.
So in Portland, you open up Klingon minutes and test out a Scoot, Shea, BI, Klingon combo for a little bit and just see what it looks like.
Be clear, I don't think I like the idea.
Yeah,
for them. Like I would just rather move Ayton for whatever I can. Like I would almost just rather do it like for Ingram and yeah, I mean, honestly, like I'd probably just let Ingram expire at that point and just try to get off the Ayton money. But I don't think they're going to think of it like that. I think they would prefer to almost have like a 1-year deal coming back or just keep Ayton because they could potentially use him as like an expiring salary slot next year, maybe.
When they maybe want to make a move.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Interesting idea, though.
It's an interesting idea. I think the answer for me is no, the more I think about it, but it does at least like stop. I think the answer is no for me in Portland, but it does at least make me like stop and think a little bit.
I mean, he has to want to get traded at the deadline, though, because as what you said, like you got
or get an extension. It has to be one of the two,
or the extension. Sure, yeah. I don't think New Orleans should be wanting to keep him long term, and I think he should be wanting to get to his new team so he can lock in be there to lock in the deal this offseason. I don't think hitting unrestricted free agency, as crazy as this sounds when I say it, is the best path for him. I don't think it's where he makes the most money.
Fred VanVleet, I think that's going to end in him staying in Houston somehow. Either they pick up the option or he signs for like 3 years, like 80 million or something like that. And
extend it out at a lower number somehow.
Yeah, it goes way down, but he doubles his, guaranteed money coming in, given how much like Nick Nurse played him when he was young and how much Ime is playing him, by the way, in Houston right now. That makes sense. The two centers are maybe the last two guys that I want to talk about here. Myles Turner and Brook Lopez are in completely fascinating situations to me. I actually wonder if Myles Turner is like the most interesting. The most interesting could be LeBron and Jimmy Butler. But like beyond those two, I think I would just rather have Myles Turner than Brandon Ingram. Even though like that's not the common consensus.
It's easier to fit him onto a team, I feel like. I mean, just because of who he is as a player.
Yeah.
I think Brandon Ingram's a better player, right?
I think Brandon Ingram is probably more talented than Myles Turner, but like I don't know if that necessarily makes him a player like that you take over one or the other, right? Like I think Turner's defense and shooting combination is just so valuable from the center position.
Yeah.
Even though, look, like to be like 100% clear, Myles is not having like an amazing season this year. Like they are struggling, and in part, like he's a reason why they are struggling a little bit. Has not consistently been quite at the level defensively that we have seen from him previously. But still, like I kind of think it's easier to slot him into a role and a role that allows you to play winning basketball as like a player that allows you to play pretty 5 out on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the way to say it. Brandon Ingram is a more talented basketball player. Myles Turner has a little bit more two-way potential or two-way value between the rim protection, and he's just the archetype of big that I love. As RTC says here, Myles is more malleable. I think that's what we're trying to get to. Is it's just really easy to fit him in. Yeah, YouTube user, a 5 who shoots and plays defense, fits on every team. That's exactly right. Again, I think this is what we got to. BI is more overall talented as an offensive basketball player. Myles Turner can go play on all 30 teams in the NBA, minus the ones that already have an all, whatever, big time center. So, and I also wonder if Turner ends up getting less money. Like, I wonder what does he go for? I mean, we saw what Hart got $30 million a year with this summer from the Thunder. It's a good
question. Is he better or worse than Isaiah Hartenstein? I think it's about the right class of center.
I think they're in the same class, different archetypes. Hartenstein is awesome defensively as well. He brings a different level of versatility on offense with the ability to pass and the little floater and stuff like that, but doesn't space the floor.
And the other thing with Myles this year is that he's not finishing around the rim nearly as much. Like that's actually been the biggest offensive issue for him. Is he's shooting 53% from 2-point range right now. If you look back through the previous 4 years, he was 61, 66, 63, 62. So he's dropped by like 10% there already.
Okay, let me ask you this though. Like if you're the Detroit Pistons and let's say you feel like
100%.
That's what I'm saying though.
Yes.
Exactly. You would give him the Isaiah Hartenstein deal, no question, this offseason. If I don't know what it would take for them to get to that money. I don't know if they could, but if they could get to that money, if they can make that happen, you do that in a heartbeat.
Yep. No, I think that absolutely makes sense. Like, you could very easily do something like, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think like if you have I'm like trying to think of the way that they can get to max space because they don't quite have max space next year. I don't think. I don't even think they have like 30. I think they have like 20 in space, something like that. Detroit. So maybe it's like you can move Fontecchio in order to get Myles Turner. Well, really, you just move one of the centers, I guess. You move one of Duren or Stewart at that point. You can get the money to work that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume they would move Duren in this situation. I assume Jalen Duren's not signing up to be the second unit big, and Isaiah Stewart seems very comfortable being that person.
Yeah, but to get to the money, you might have to move Stewart anyway.
Because Duren's still in the rookie deal.
Yeah, like between Tobias Harris, Stewart, and Cade Cunningham next year, I think they're at like 80 million or so. And then they have Jaden, who gets them to 90, Holland and Asar, who get them to like 107 combined. And then you have Fontecchio and Duren. That gets you to 122.
Yep.
And the cap is slated at 154 plus whatever their draft pick is, plus like the Sasser and Bobby Clinton deals. Maybe you can get a little closer than I thought. You'd probably still have to move somebody on like a mid-range deal, but yeah.
I mean, I would assume you could offload Fontecchio's $8 million expiring this offseason for, what somebody would take that, and even if it's a fake second round pick that they do, even if you just had to get off of it to get Myles Turner, they could get there.
This is actually an interesting one. Would you move Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jalen Duren for Myles Turner? Basically, this would have to be that Turner tells Indiana that
he's not resigning.
He's going to look elsewhere in the offseason. I mean, I look, if I was Detroit and I could do like an under the table agreement with Myles where Myles says, yes, I will stay for, we can lock in a $35 million a year extension or whatever it is, 32. I would do that if I was Detroit for sure.
No comment.
And if you're like the reason I bring that up too, and why I thought it was like somewhat interesting was because Indiana has kind of experimented a little bit with these guys like James Wiseman, these like pure rim runners.
Yeah, no, I actually like for the record, I think Jalen Duren makes more sense in like if he's going to be successful, I think he's probably got a better chance there than in Detroit. Okay, so some of the other teams, does Turner?
Houston would be another one.
Houston, does Turner make sense in Washington? Like, do you pair him with Alex Sarr there? Do we like that at all? I don't love it as much as somebody like Valanciunas.
They get crushed on the glass a little bit.
Yeah, Brooklyn has Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe. Like, they got to figure that out before you add anybody else to the mix. Yep. Turner and Wemby. Like, I mean, there's enough versatility there, but I don't like it.
They've done the five experiment with Matt Collins.
Because Turner doesn't make sense as the you want to keep Wemby as the primary guy. Turner doesn't make sense as the other guy in that defensively. So
yep. That's right. And then like they have trying to think if Toronto could make some moves at the deadline to try and get there, I think. So
that's an interesting one, right? We saw them prioritize KO. So it seems like that would be a path. This has them at just over $1 million right now for projection.
Yeah, no, and they still have Pirtle. Like
you'd have to move
it doesn't make sense for Toronto. It would have to be like moving Pirtle's money to bring him in.
He makes sense as a player. It just the money in the contract situations don't.
Well, and Pirtle at 19 is going to be a better deal than whatever Turner signs.
That's true.
Too.
Yeah. I mean, you have Pirtle and KO at 32 next year, where then you'd have to get off of them and bring Turner in for the same amount.
Yeah, and look, like Richard asks, like, would Indiana really let Turner leave? I mean, Turner's an unrestricted free agent, so it's really up to him. But I mean, Indiana's absolutely going to have to offer Myles Turner like a bag. Like there is no question asked there. That is an undeniable fact. They have to offer him a bag.
This is the drawback to what they did whenever they gave him that lump sum, not lump sum, but they like raised his cap by 10 or whatever million the year they had cap space, and then it went down. But the downside to this now is there was no extension opportunity or anything like that, right? Like he was going to, for the Pacers anyway, this is the downside. And here's the other thing. You give him that money, I feel like you're pretty locked into this roster, right? I mean,
I think they're kind of locked into this roster as it is, in all honesty.
Yeah. I mean, that's
just given the way, I mean, they have 13 on the books for Obi Toppin. They have Naismith for 11, McConnell for 9, Mathurin, who by the way is extension eligible this summer and is playing well offensively. I might try to move that at the deadline in all honesty, but like that's tricky for sure. They're in with them not being good right now, with them being like actually like frustrating to watch and 9-14 on the season. Indiana is in a harder position than what I would have thought they would be in coming into the year, because they're already pretty locked in money wise. Like all of Halliburton, Siakam, Toppin, Naismith, McConnell, Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, Andrew Nembhard are all locked in for at least 2 more years on top of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just counted. They could be up to 180 if they gave Turner the contract we're talking about.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yes, that's right. I think it would actually be more than that for what
it could be. Like I was literally rounding numbers, and but wow.
In the first apron next year, I think for what it's worth, I think they'd be at like 200 or so. Like I think it'd be like pretty significantly more, and they would be like clearly over the first apron.
What's the first apron?
Around like 196.
90, 120.
So it's tough.
It would be over. What I say? It's 200 for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's like 200, 205. They could probably stay under the second apron, but like, that's where it gets hard now. They have to actually, that's why the Toppin move like didn't really track for me. Why I didn't like that and didn't think it made sense unless you were just trying to get salaries to build together a trade that made sense. I'm not a fan of that. And like the McConnell thing makes sense. They'll be able to move that deal whenever. That's like a $9 million deal for a good player. But like, they're almost going to have to make a choice here on, do we want Turner or Mathurin? Because they definitely can't afford to pay both of those guys.
And they're both starting right now for what it's worth, or have started.
Correct.
And so, I mean, and Mathurin has been very good offensively, at least. Like he's having a very good year thus far on the offensive end.
Yeah.
I feel like
if they give both Turner and Mathurin deals, they are well into the second apron. Drastically so.
I feel like it's hard to give Nembhard the deal they gave him and then also pay Mathurin. And like, I think it's hard to as much as I love Mathurin, it would seem bad process to prioritize Mathurin to let Turner walk whenever your roster looks the way it does right now.
Yeah. And maybe they think that they can just get off of these deals. Like they think that Siakam always has value and Toppin will be able to be moved, and Naismith certainly could be moved. McConnell can certainly be moved. Nembhard, I think on that deal makes sense still too. But yeah, I mean, look, you still have to match the money. That's the thing. You still have to match all of the dollar figures, and they're not very good right now. So none of those guys' trade values have really been helped at this point this season, outside of maybe Mathurin, who is still a real defensive question mark. Last one that we want to go on is Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez is just kind of like, okay, does Milwaukee want to keep him? If not, obviously there were Houston rumors last time. I don't know if it makes as much sense for them to do that and have Şengün on a full money deal. It made more sense to have Brook Lopez and Şengün when Şengün was making like $6 million a year, $5 million a year, right? So I feel like this is like Milwaukee, or he's taking a mid-level at his age, and he's better than that. So it's hard. It's really hard.
He's really important for them. Like, obviously they've righted the ship right now. Giannis has been incredible. I wrote in my notes today, I was watching a Bucks game. Like, I don't think I've given Dame enough credit for how good he's been this year and how well he has played. They're also getting floor space. You know, Taurean Prince is like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league right now, percentage wise. Gary Trent Jr.'s figured it out, but really, like, Brook Lopez still anchors that defense. Guys change their minds to an extent, not the same level as Wemby or people like that, but his size dictates things in the lane. He can still space the floor. He's a threat out there. He's really important to that team. I think I would assume I don't know this stuff, but I would assume he is in a good position there, feels good there, and I feel like they will prioritize him. I would be interested to see how many years other teams would give him. If I'm Milwaukee, I would just, add an extra year to something, to a deal and keep him around. I don't think they can let him go unless this thing turns south back the way it was to start the year, which, again, I think they figured it out. They've looked solid in the games I've watched recently.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think they look much better. Okay. Let's get out of free agency. Look, like Caruso, we'll see if he ends up signing an extension. Bruce Brown, I think, is like a trade candidate more than anything. But there are just like a few other interesting names here. Naz Reid's another one, but they have to figure out what they're going to do with Randall as well, who theoretically could hit free agency. The thing I want to talk about is, I don't know if you saw this report, but Ja Morant is basically going to try and stop dunking as much. He has dunked 4 times in 12 games. A couple of those have been just like massive, massive dunks. And Kelly Eco wrote this article in The Athletic. It looks like he, kind of grabbed it from ESPN. ESPN might have grabbed a quote here. Sometimes I get knocked out of the air and a foul doesn't get called. And now I'm out longer than what I'm supposed to be, Morant said, according to ESPN. Sometimes the foul might get called. I still hit the floor, but after the game, you might feel that little fall. So I just pick and choose, man. Hey, 2 points is 2 points. I get it done. That's all that matters. So, Bryce, here's my question to you. And this will be the Robinhood section here. Are you bearish or bullish on Ja Morant stopping dunking in order to preserve his health?
Remind me which one means which.
I believe that bearish is good, or is bullish good.
Bear clawed down.
A bull market is good. Bearish is bad.
Bullish is up. So do I think that this is something he's actually going to do? Do I believe in this? I'm cool with it. I'm fine with it. Like, do you have issues with it that he wants that his mind, that he's thinking this way?
Oh, I am very bullish on the idea of him doing this.
So
I just don't know if, like, when you've played this way your whole life, I just don't know if you can, like, stop this from happening.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna say. I am bullish on the idea. I think the idea makes sense, and I think he's talented enough, has the body control and the finesse enough to make it happen. Like, I'm cool. Like, figure out the way to finish. I'm with you though. I'm a little bearish that he can actually do it, because it's in your, like, eventually it's who you are. He's played a lot of years. Ja Morant is, I realize he's 25, but
like, he's played basketball forever. You know what I mean?
Like, I assume he dunked when he was 15. So we have 10 years of the way he attacks the basket is predicated on him putting dudes in the rim. It's hard to change that mentality. I will be fascinated to see. But the one thing I don't want it to do is change him attacking, like the way, how often he attacks the basket. I don't want that to be a thing. I like that he's just saying, like, I'm not going to go for dunks. I'm just going to finish a different way. So love that. Bullish on that. A little more bearish on whether he can actually do that, because when the juices are flowing and the energy's high and you see that opportunity, I think it's hard to turn it down.
I think it is too for him, I would imagine. The other piece of it that is interesting about this is that I've always loved his patience. I've always loved how smart he is.
Yeah.
In terms of just like thinking through the game, right? And just being confident and sharp and being able to like use his frame, even though he's really skinny, he's so good at using like his hip to bump into guys and then like exploding to his right or to his left or forward, right? So that patience, I think, allows him to be successful. But I will be interested to see if it can actually work. Yeah. I will be interested to see if like it works in practicality. And like, if he decides I'm not going to lift up and like go for this massive dunk all the time, does he have to adjust his footwork on his gathers a little bit?
Yes,
does he have to change the way he plays in that respect as well? I don't know. We'll see. I love the idea.
Because if you were elevating for a dunk, you can just explode out of your gather to the rim. If you're going to go for a finesse finish, you now have to decelerate. You may have to maneuver your body a different way. You may have to extend. Like, I'm not saying he can't do these things. His level of athleticism probably lends itself to being able to do these things. It just is a very different approach to attacking. And we're not talking about like wide open dunks where there's no defender around, right? Like, we're talking about contested ones.
Yeah.
Like, it very much changes the equation of how you gather, where you get, like even where you gather from, the distance you can leave the floor from. And so like, there's just a whole lot of that plays into this. I very much think he can do it, which is why I'm bullish on the idea. Yet again, it's a mentality switch that I think is easier said than done.
Okay. That has been Bearish or Bullish, brought to you by the good folks over at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for any net worth for just $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about before we get to the NBA draft Q&A. With the in-season tournament, we have a final 8 currently. We have what? I'm looking for my matchups here. Do you have the matchups in front of you? Where did my matchups go?
I'm pulling it up right now. We have the Magic versus the Bucks and the Mavericks versus the Thunder on Tuesday. We have the Hawks versus the Knicks, Warriors, Rockets on Wednesday. So Eastern Conference, Magic, Bucks, Hawks, Knicks. Western Conference, Mavericks, Thunder, Warriors, Rockets.
Yeah, the Bucks won Group B, the Knicks won Group A. The Magic ended up getting the wild card out of Group A, and then the Hawks won Group C over both the Celtics and the Cavaliers, which is just incredible shit that this was able to happen this way. In the West, Houston won Group A, Oklahoma City won Group B, and then the Warriors won Group C with Dallas getting the wild card out of Group C and also having the best point differential of any team in the Western Conference group stages. Is there anything within those matchups that you see as, look, like we can pick the teams that we think are going to be more likely to win, right? Like I'm sure that we would both say that, you know, we like Milwaukee and New York being at home, right? And we like Oklahoma City being at home. And we like, you know, Houston or Golden State's probably the most interesting one to me. But is there a team you feel like, let me phrase it this way. Is this interesting to you in regard to who will win? And do you think it says anything about the future of the season about who will win?
Listen, I have no problem with the in-season tournament and NBA Cup or whatever, but like I couldn't have told you what group teams were in what groups. Like the closest I followed was the Pistons.
Me either.
The Pistons actually won a few games, and so they quite literally played their most important regular season game in the 5 years that I've watched them play against Tuesday against the Bucks, and of course that did not go well. So like that's all I couldn't have told you the teams that were in it outside of that. But as I look at this, I do think the teams, it carries a little more weight. Even if you watch the way the Bucks played that night, I thought it carried a little more weight. They played very well, and I know they are playing well. My takeaways as I look at this: can Franz take over the NBA Cup and continue to show on a national stage how good he is? Think the Hawks are a very intriguing team right now. I think Jalen Johnson is
I do too.
One of my favorite players in the NBA. Sam, I love that guy. We have the Mavericks Thunder rematch of that series last year in the Western Conference. So and then the Warriors Rockets will be entertaining. So all of these games are entertaining to me. I think what I find myself wanting is like a Hawks Rockets NBA Cup game or a Magic Rockets or something. Like I don't care to see the Bucks in it. I don't care to see the Knicks in it. Sorry, GMAC. Like, I know the Thunder are really good. I don't need them to win the NBA Cup. Even I want to see one of these other teams. It would almost interest me more than some of the established teams that are a part of it.
I actually agree with you on that. It was really fun last year seeing Indiana go on a huge run.
Yeah.
I thought that was the coolest part of it to me last year, was seeing Indiana just play incredibly positive basketball. And oh, by the way, Indiana didn't win it, but they ended up going to the Eastern Conference Finals in part because they traded for Siakam after that. In the style of play with the team was totally different because Halliburton was dominating the in-season tournament and did not play super well in the playoffs and got hurt eventually. But I do wonder if it does give a real confidence boost. And in that vein, given what happened with Oklahoma City and Dallas last year, I actually do wonder if that's the most important game. I do wonder if that is a game where both those teams are going to be really fucking competitive.
Sure.
Really want to get to Vegas. And it actually could say something about what those two look like moving forward in what is shaping up. I mean, just frankly, those are two of the four best teams in the West right now. There's every chance they end up having to play in the playoffs again. Yeah,
no, that's what I was going to say is not only did they play last year, but seems like roads could lead to them doing it again this year. And sign me up for that series. I think that would be fascinating. Yep. Two well-built teams. I mean, the thing that Thunder fans will say is, they're not fully healthy, which is completely fair and understandable. So you're not getting the full version of them or even close to it with no Chet, but I would still sign up for it. To me, the more I think about it, as you mentioned with Hallie and the Pacers last year, I find it more interesting as a stage for a younger, up-and-coming type team. I see it as more of a stage for them. And that's why the team, like the Rockets, stand out to me. Go win the NBA Cup. Not that establishes themselves in the Western Conference. They've already done that with their play. But I think it would be awesome to see them win that. Franz, again, I think this would be, can you lead the Paulo-less Magic to an NBA Cup? I would be up for that storyline. If Giannis and Dame,
in Franz's case, before we move to Giannis and Dame, Halliburton last year springboarded himself to the All-NBA team.
Yeah.
Through his play in the NBA Cup, and that kind of carried through, even with him struggling later in the year. Very similar to Tyrese Halliburton. Franz has a number of incentives in his contract where if he makes All-NBA, he gets 30% of the salary cap next year as opposed to 25.
Yeah.
This is a great potential springboard for Franz in order to try and set that run up, because you and I both had Franz All-NBA for the first quarter of the season. I mean, shit, if they win the NBA Cup again, or if they win the NBA Cup and, he's the big reason why and wins MVP of that thing and Like that would be enormous. That would be huge, huge, huge for him, just in terms of getting, because look, like, no disrespect, I'm not throwing shots at my fellow media members here.
Narrative.
You and I watch more basketball than what they do. We are a bit more engaged in terms of like who is like really performing than I would argue probably, I would say at least 80% of the voters. Let's go with. So being able to point to that would be fucking enormous for him, to be able to make that money.
To your point, what games are all of those voters going to watch? They're going to watch these games, right? I don't know if they're watching, games from last night. Like, I have downloaded in the queue. I'm watching Atlanta, Milwaukee as we speak. And then after that, I'm watching the Orlando Philly game from last night. Like every night I pick out 2 or 3 games, but voters are going to watch these NBA Cup games. So Franz, honestly, the other one, Alperen Şengün, this is a great opportunity for him on that stage as well.
Yeah.
Jalen Johnson, he's not in the same tier as those guys right now, but I don't know that people understand how good Jalen Johnson's almost averaging 20 and 10 right now for the Hawks. He is really good, really versatile. And that team is just kind of fun to watch in general.
They're great to watch. Yeah.
And so where I was going was like, I don't know that I learn anything from Giannis and Dame if they go win the NBA Cup. Like maybe of these teams, they would be the ones like, okay, they're really truly figuring it out. It's really some of these younger storyline teams that I'm more fascinated. And that's why an Orlando versus Houston NBA Cup final is way more intriguing to me than a Milwaukee Dallas even. Like I'm cool on that. Like I've seen that. I'm okay. Those guys have their names. I don't think they need that stage as much as some of these other young guys I think could benefit more from it.
I agree. We're not going to do the prediction game because it's just a crapshoot at the end of the day to me. But I think we can move on now to the 2025 NBA draft Q&A section. Yeah. So, okay, here we go. The 2025 NBA draft Q&A. We sent out the clarion call for questions over on Blue Sky, over on Twitter. We will take questions from YouTube users as well. We have a bunch of really fun ones here. I'm excited to kind of dive deep into them. We're going to start with some more theory-based questions, and then we'll dig into more focused questions on like specific prospects. Let's go with that. Okay. This was one I was literally talking on the phone before you and I started this, and I brought this one up to the agent I was talking to. From Aaron Avery over on Blue Sky. How much tougher does the portal / NIL capabilities make scouting and understanding player skill sets? Does the portal give more rise to non-mid-major program players or non-major program players? So more mid-majors. My immediate reaction to this was, I actually think the portal makes scouting way easier, if I'm being honest. Specifically the portal, because if somebody decides to move from one situation to another, previously, if it wasn't working out in one situation, you kind of got the sense that like, okay, maybe it's just a bad situation, right? Maybe it's just not the right coach for this kid. Maybe it's just not the right scheme. He went there for a reason and it didn't work out, right? If he goes to a second location and it doesn't work there, it probably like kind of weeds that player out a little bit in terms of like someone that matters or doesn't matter. On top of that, like it gives players a second chance. It gives players like a better opportunity to find a scheme that fits them, to find a situation and a coaching staff that fits them. I think the portal has made scouting way easier. Now, the thing is that like, you know, when I'm talking to coaches and they ask me about like, hey, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? Whenever they're portal hunting themselves, it can be hard. Like it can be hard to say like this guy, his translation up to this level, that can be trickier for sure. But I will also say this as somebody who like digs into the weeds and is constantly talking to college coaches as well about who they should look at, who they shouldn't look at in the portal. It makes me dig deeper into college basketball and have like a wider range of scouting, like a really, really wide lens of all of these guys. And I think it's made my life easier as a scout. I don't know how you feel about it, Bryce.
Yeah, no, I think what you said there is my biggest takeaway is you look for these guys at lower majors right now. Like you're looking for, the big sky is always the conference for me, right? You had Dalton connect to Tennessee. You actually had Dylan Jones come out of Weber State last year. Cedric Coward is at Washington State this year. St. Thomas went to USC out of the big sky. Money Williams is at Montana right now. It's like, who is the next guy? And I'm not always saying they have to transfer, but you're always looking for the next player out of these conferences, right? The conference I played in, the Patriot League, like I'm always like, okay, where are these guys? They got a guy, they got a kid playing for Santa Clara right now. And after what Pajimski does, you watch every transfer that comes into Santa Clara. Like, is this the next kid that's going to do it? And so to your point, I think it makes it harder in that we have to be better about scouting across the country at all of these levels, but I'm more in tune to guys at that level than I think I would have been if I was doing this 8 years ago, because those guys are coming. And the other thing is then we get a chance to evaluate these guys. I think it's just so much easier to transfer, obviously, the most obvious thing I've said, but it gives us a chance to evaluate them, right? Janai Broom, instead of just evaluating him off Morehead State film, we're getting him off Auburn film now. And there's all sorts. Dalton Connect was not going to be a first round pick out of Northern Colorado, with all due respect to Northern Colorado. Love Coach Smiley. He's put some really good players at the next level, both the higher Division I and the NBA. Connect wasn't going to be a first round pick out of Northern Colorado. Nobody would have taken him that way, but he got a chance to go play at Tennessee. So I think that's where it helps and make things easier is we get a chance to evaluate these kids at that next level, and we get a better vibe and feel for them.
I think that I also feel that way about it. And in terms of like the NIL component adding to it, I think it's just going to make kids stay in school longer because they're getting paid, which means I don't have to figure them out at a younger age, which makes like, it just helps you just kind of weed out wild question marks as freshmen, like Tony Mitchell. Was that the kid that was at North Texas a bunch of years ago? Like it gives you just so much more time to figure these kids out, like Deontay Davis or somebody else might not have left Michigan State. Like you're going to have more time to evaluate these kids, which will make it a little bit easier, I think.
You know what that's done for me though, that's made it a little bit harder where I don't have a ton of intel, is how many of these kids were like, did the NBA not like them at all? Or did the NBA just not like them enough to pay them more than what their NIL was going to be? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like some of these kids, it's like, oh, well, the NBA must have hated them. No. The NBA, he had 10 two-way offers. It's just his NIL package was more than that. And he felt like he could go back, make that NIL for a year, and then come back and still have those two-way offers, or, move himself into a first-round pick. So sometimes I find myself going, man, they must not have liked him in the pre-draft. They must not have liked him last year. He hasn't improved a ton. And that's not the case, right? Like that's not realistic, because the money is so good for some of these kids in college that it's a smarter money decision.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay. From RC12, the runner at Blue Sky. How do you weigh a player you love and believe in, plus has a high median outcome, i.e. being a good rotation player, versus a player you aren't particularly high on, but has a huge upside?
Yeah.
So this is always a really fun conversation. Personally, I always just kind of boil it down almost to like an expected value equation.
Yeah.
Where it's, I'm doing this calculation in my head, not, I don't have like a formula for it necessarily, but like, I think This player has significant all-star upside. If it all goes right in terms of his development, he has an X% chance to get there. What does that mean for his value? Or like, I'm trying to think of somebody last year that I felt really good that Dalton Connect was going to be a rotation player at the very least, right? Like that was like the worst case scenario for me. You don't shoot it like he does and like be out of the NBA, right? So, but I didn't love the like upside. Like I thought he might be like a 20-point per game scorer, but I didn't think he was ever going to be like a two-way savant that is, dishing and diming guys like all over the court. That just wasn't really his skill set. So like, how do you mix and match that? I mean, it's, again, to me, it's like kind of, I think of it like an expected value equation in my head and kind of go for it there. The only place where that shifts for me a little bit is near the top of the draft. And all of these situations are so team by team.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you are the Brooklyn Nets right now, or if you're the Washington Wizards, like the Wizards were the perfect example of this. Like, Alex Sarr makes a ton of sense for them. Just to take the flyer on and see if it works out, right? You have multiple first round picks. You might as well go for this and just see what it looks like.
Correct.
Because if you can develop him, he's 7 foot tall, 7'4", can switch defensively, great weak side rim protector. The offense is a total question mark, but there are real skills there. Theoretical shooter, can handle the ball quite a bit, needs to get way stronger, needs to have the frame fill out, everything like that. But they should be the ones that take that flyer. If you're somebody like, I'm trying to think. Like for Atlanta, for instance, right? I understand them taking Ricochet. It's a good question. I think I probably would have taken, if I didn't know that I was getting Dyson Daniels,
you would have taken Steph.
Draft, I might have taken Steph.
Yeah.
But regardless, like it would have been a different conversation for me than just like pure upside hunting for Atlanta, because I have Trae Young already. I have like a interesting veteran laden roster. Like
Jalen
Johnson's already there, who I think is a real upside swing. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it in my head. And it's so different from team to team. Like everybody tries to simplify this shit, and there's just no way to simplify it. The more that you like really get to know teams and get to know people within the league, I'm telling you, like people on the outside can try to simplify this as much as humanly possible, but it's just a really bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I know people like to like call people out on, for your take on not just yours, but in general, people's takes on where they have players ranked and stuff like that. The one thing I learned last cycle where I did, get a chance to talk to a few more scouts and stuff is I would ask them about players. And from the 4 or 5 scouts I talked to, the ranges I got were insane. Sam. Yeah. They were insane. And I was like, okay, I don't like nobody.
I know a team near the top. I know a team near the top that had Alex Sarr like 10th.
Yeah.
On their board. I know teams that had him at 1. Like it, and I don't say that to say that like Alex Sarr isn't like a great prospect. And I don't say that to say like, oh my God, the Wizards made a mistake. Like this is so stupid. Don't fucking aggregate this. I'm just making a point here. Like, there's just a wide disparity. That's the reality. When you have people around the league that do this professionally, like I saw PD Webb, I retweeted this because of course I did, like tweeted earlier today.
Yeah. About how people got mad about his, I mean, Sam, in the last 24 hours, you and I have both been called clowns on Twitter.
Oh, it's the best. It's true. Like, I don't really care what people say on Twitter.
No, really. I know. Like I don't care that people call me a clown. Like, I get upset with what you said earlier. Like if people don't think I watch the game, then you're wrong. Yeah, like insane. you can think I'm an idiot, but don't think I don't work hard. But
right. Yeah. Like, PD and shout out PD. 80% of replies to rankings, mocks, or big boards are a variant of how dare you not have the same opinions as me, you coward. Like that should just be our, like, we should literally just make that the logo to our, to the podcast here.
So listen, I think it's at the top, especially to answer this question, is I go a little bit more upside. Like, this is why, like, Ace Bailey is going to be a player I continue to believe in, because I think the archetype there is crazy, even though I understand the questions. And I will say, though, like, if you start to drop that player, like Malawash is one right now where he's starting to move down my board, and it could happen rapidly because the upside at the top of the draft, I'm a little bit more willing to take the swing. Well, if I don't feel like he's worth it in the top 5, 7, 8, then all of a sudden I don't feel as good. Like, I would rather take the guy with the median outcome, as the question says here. The other thing I'll say to this question is, when you're not representing a specific team, stuff is a little bit different as well.
It's so amorphous.
It's
like,
so
that's
hard.
the thing.
Like, Rob Dillingham was the perfect example, right? Like, you and I probably had Rob Dillingham a little bit lower than most everybody in the public space. But when Minnesota drafted him, we didn't exactly crush it, even based on where we had him on our boards, because we felt like that was a team that he could make a lot of sense for. If the Pistons would have drafted him, I feel like our reaction to that pick could have been very, very different. And so, like, that's where it gets hard for, I'm not trying to give us a cop out, but where it's a little harder for us, we're just trying to, in a vacuum, rank all of these players.
Yeah. And this is the other thing. I mentioned this on, I don't know when this is coming out, but I recorded with Nekias Duncan and Steve Jones for the Dunker Spot.
Oh, nice.
And one of the things that Steve asked me was just like, or Steve or Nekias, I can't remember. One of them asked me about process, or no, Steve asked me about like something like in regard to like the way I see it versus teams and things. It was, I can't remember the exact question, but like, I'd literally been on the phone yesterday or the day before that, talking to an NBA, executive. And we were talking about the fact that like this person like does not have a ranking right now. You know what I mean? Because different teams do it different ways. Like some teams have already submitted ranking. Like some teams have made their scouts, their executives, whoever, submit rankings already, and they average together, and that's their board, for now, right? In terms of who the lead executives have to go see. Some teams do it where like nobody has a board yet. They haven't even met yet on this. And they're just trying to gather information, right? What like particularly I do, and what you do as well now, I have to do all of this publicly. Like teams get to do this behind closed doors and get to like have different thought processes and like throw different weird takes at the wall. And like we try and do that anyway because it's whatever. But you better believe that when we do that, we're absolutely going to get called clowns for doing it. We're absolutely going to get ripped on the internet for throwing different ideas out there. And it's fine. Like I don't really care. I don't know how you feel about it. I've just built up like 10 years of, whatever it is at this point.
My love language is words of affirmation. So it cuts a little bit. That's why I don't follow. I don't follow the comments while we record live because I struggle.
The YouTube comment section here is actually, or like the live chat is always pretty good actually.
Yeah.
But like, I have to do this. I have to release a top 100 board earlier this week publicly. Like NBA teams don't have to do that. Like it makes their life like a little bit easier in that regard. Like I have like different takes on things than other people do. Like I saw Wasserman released his top 100, his mock draft. He has Myles Bird in the top 20 right now. That's a guy that a bunch of scouts went to go see. Where was he? Was he Palm Springs, or was there might've been a San Diego tournament as well? Actually, now that I think about it, he might've been there. NBA scouts I talked to really liked him. Like it was hit or miss depending on who I talked to, but like, I'm like, I don't know that Myles Bird's a 2025 prospect, but I'm not going to clown Wasserman for being like, for having a different take than I do for a player that I think has a lot of upside. And I rank Myles Bird at like 99 or something like that.
I mean, here's to the question too, is we also don't have a team construct to build our thoughts and processes around, like we don't have a team where we have a primary. Yeah. We already have a primary option, right? Well, if I'm a team that already has a primary option, I can eliminate all of these upside primary option guys on my board or rank them lower where it's like, okay, only if he really falls do we take this guy. We just need to go get a 3-and-D wing, or we need to go get a, whatever. Like, it just, we don't have that. We have to just say, okay, well, this guy is what, to the question, I really believe in him, but he's kind of a median outcome. Well, that may not make sense for the 5 teams that are up, with whenever he becomes available, as opposed to this, you know what I mean? Like, we just don't have that construct to do in terms of that. It's just big picture, like everything, and it makes it hard.
Yeah, and Dirty Dancer brings up NBA teams literally you have to find 3 guys they like and probably barely care beyond that. That is literally the best piece of advice. Not the best, but like it's up there in terms of like really smart things I've been told from a GM. I don't know if I can say the name of the GM who said this necessarily, because we were just like literally driving back like from a place at Portland, like at Hoop Summit. So it wasn't like we were on the record or anything, but like this person, like, told me, he was just like, look, I don't really care what, like how strong or weak a draft is. I just have to find one guy.
Yeah.
Like if I've picked 20 or whatever, all I need to do is find a guy that I like. And the odds are there is one guy available that I think is going to be a good NBA player at that point.
Yep.
So it's just a totally different job. And I don't know if people totally recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. And this will be the last theoretical question. And then we'll get into more like specific prospects.
Cool.
How do you go about projecting and evaluating the defensive guards? Feel like there are so many guards that come into the league as poor defenders, even though they were like engaged in solid defenders in college basketball. And this came from Roa Jerapu, who I think Rohan asked us the question earlier in the show as well. To me, it's really about physical tools.
Yeah.
Like for guards, it is even more about physical tools to me than it is for bigs. Bigs obviously need to be, hit a certain height and hit a certain weight and, have quickness and everything like that. But like the best guard defenders in the league, outside of really like the only one I can think of that's made an all defense team recently that I wouldn't call like a particularly like monstrous athlete, is probably Fred VanVleet. But Fred is like exceptionally strong. And Fred, now that I'm looking at it, I don't even know if Fred did make an all defense team. Looking at it, I think he may have just only gotten votes for it like over the years. If you look at the guys that make all defense teams, it's like Jalen Suggs, fucking sick athlete. Amen Thompson will make these, like disgusting, incredible, unbelievable athlete. Eric Bledsoe was like nicknamed like mini LeBron for a minute, like in his career, even though he was 6 foot tall because he was so physical and explosive, right? Mike Conley was one of the fastest guards in the league when he was really, really good. And look, like defensively, you need to be good at navigating screens. You need to be good at doing, a number of different things. It's not just physical tools. But for me, like a big piece of evaluating like who are going to be the highest end defensive guards in the league, it's physical tools for the most part.
I agree with that. I think mentality is another thing you can watch. Like I feel like Marcus Smart has been a really good defender. Obviously there's physical tools there as well, but like just has a certain level of mentality. I think when watching college basketball, I think one thing you want to watch for is the matchups. A guy could maybe show as like, oh, he's not a bad defender. Well, is he being hidden on his college team? Like, what kind of matchup is he taking on his college team? And then whenever I'm watching guards and evaluating them, especially, how do they navigate ball screens? And some teams, this is really hard, guys, because you watch some teams and they just switch. They soft switch every single ball screen, or you watch a team and they're hard hedging. Well, when the big is hard hedging, the navigation of the ball screen from the guard is completely different than if you're in the NBA and they're playing drop. And so I try to evaluate that as much as possible because this is such a thing they're going to have to do. But I think along with the physical tools, which I completely agree with Sam, either are you super fast? Are you super strong? Do you have crazy length?
Yep.
Lateral
and
quickness?
It can be strength for what it's worth. Like
Yes.
I didn't talk a ton about the strength, but like Drew Holiday is a great example of just being fucking stronger than everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and you see some of these guys that like you just have to hold up physically. I was talking to a scout last year about a player and they were just like, we think he's going to get knocked off his line every time somebody drives it. So he was talking about from a defensive perspective, offensive players driving downhill, we're afraid that this player won't be able to hold that line and force the offensive player off the line. We think he's just going to get knocked off the line. He's not strong enough. And so that's a huge part of it as well. But just the mentality, I do think with guards still, you want to see, do they rotate, all of those type of things? But I reserve that more for forwards, bigs, in terms of kind of the off-ball movements and rotation and low man verticality and all of that stuff. With guards, it's kind of that point of attack, physical tools plus screen navigation mentality. Who are they guarding, right? Like, I don't care if they stop some dude that's not that good, can't shoot, so they can just play off of or whatever. How do they look against the best players? And I think that's what really stands out to me.
Yeah. And, just looking through the guards who have made all defense teams recently, right? So Derik White is probably like an example of a non-crazy athlete, but Derik White is like 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan and has the requisite quickness to be able to like just overwhelm guards with his length in some respect, right? Looking through here, Herb Jones, 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan, but he's more of a wing. Caruso gets by more just through being like a basketball freaking savant. But again, like 6'5" with a 6'8" wingspan, I think, like something like that. So again, super quick and also super long for a guard. Drew Holiday, we've talked about. Mikal Bridges, Marcus Smart, like these guys are all like physical dudes. Patrick Beverly might be a name that people think of. Like Patrick Beverly has like a 6'7" wingspan at 6 foot tall. Like he is a very long dude who is like super strong as well for his size.
Dyson Daniels, the guy that I know he hasn't made one yet, but obviously we talked about 6'10" and a half wingspan. So like they're
at 6'7". Yeah.
And, you talk about Amin Thompson, who you brought up, you think he has a chance to be one of the better perimeter defenders. And I know he's a little more wingy, like, whatever, but like athletic tools, crazy wingspan.
Yep. Jalen Suggs, enormous, right? Yeah. Like big for a guard. So it's that. It's, the other thing now is ground coverage. Like we talk about that all the time on the show. Being able to cover ground is the name of the game in today's NBA. And that's a huge piece of defense as well. In terms of like the middling defenders and like trying to figure them out, that's where it's like, okay, can you cover ground? Can you stop at the point of attack? Can you hold up in any way physically? Like that's the stuff that's really, really important as well.
Yep.
Okay. Next question. Let's start with this one. From Ben Walker 14 over on Blue Sky. If the draft were tonight, do you think there are any teams that would not take Cooper Flagg number 1? So this is probably more of a me question than a you question, but I'll be interested to hear your take on like how close you think some of the guys at the top are. Again, everyone's board is so amorphous right now. I think Cooper would go number 1 for everybody, but like, it's certainly more of a conversation within front offices right now than what it was in the preseason. I would say after the emergence of like Dylan Harper, with the way Egor has looked a little bit, I like still truly Harper and Egor are the two names I get the most in terms of guys that could challenge him. But I still think Cooper would go number 1 for everybody.
So
if you work for an NBA team and you listen to the show, and I know many of you do, in your organization, you do not think would take Cooper at number 1, please reach out because I would like to know.
I want to know too. So DMs are open. You can DM me and let me know. My initial reaction is also no. My secondary reaction is if a team were to, it would be a very point guard needy team. So like find the most point guard needy team that decides that Dylan Harper or Egor are their guy. Again, as much as I am a Ace Bailey guy right now, I don't know that he's shown enough to say, hey, we'll take this archetype over what Cooper provides, just overall versatility. I think there is a world where Ace shows enough where you go, we'll take the high-end two-way wing primary option, and we value that more than Cooper's versatility and defensive impact. Ace just hasn't shown enough yet for me to think that's a realistic option for any team. I think the point guard needy team is probably the more realistic path right now.
I would agree with that. The other thing I will say is that Cooper is starting to solve problems like in a real way. Like if you watch the Auburn game last night, like he's starting to figure out like, okay, I can't just backspin on my drives a lot of the time. Like I need to stop and like pivot, like reverse back and then get to a jumper that way. How he continues to work through those problems and problem solve as he turns 18 here this month and figures things out. That is going to be the thing to track with him, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the only knock is scoring right now. With like everything else is incredible.
Yeah. Okay. This was the player I got more questions on than anybody else. Shout out to Stramben over on Twitter who got it first, I think. Where are you guys with Jeremiah Fears? Ben said, like, is he a lottery pick in 2026? I've seen people have him as a first rounder this year. I'll give you the floor first here. You've watched at least one game. I know that of Fears. I've watched two to this point. Where like specifically I've taken like detailed notes on him. Where are you at with Fears? Let's just kind of leave it base there.
I was a little behind on him compared to other guys. So I did catch a game. They played Arizona. So I'm really interested to compare notes because there was a couple things in this game that I found interesting based off what I watched and what the numbers are. So he shot it extremely well in this game. And I was like, okay, if this is how he shoots it, I see the first round pick, but the numbers aren't there. I thought he was a very willing passer. I liked how he let the game come to him. I appreciated that in this game. I didn't think he forced a lot. I thought he was a willing passer. I thought he operated ball screens really well. But then the turnover numbers are high on the year. I obviously didn't watch a high turnover game, so I haven't seen the game yet where that's an issue. So I want to see that a little bit more as well. I think he has some real creativity and wiggle to what he does. Again, I mentioned operating ball screens. Defensively, okay. The defensive play names are really good. The steal numbers are really good, but this was actually a game where that didn't show up as much. So
yeah, I feel like both Arizona and Louisville in the two games I watched, like kind of went away from him a little bit more. Specifically Arizona, like just didn't really like they were trying to attack other guys on Oklahoma. They weren't really trying to attack him.
Yeah, so that's where I am at after a one-game watch. Obviously, I will continue to watch games very soon to get a more well-rounded picture. I'm kind of interested to hear how you can balance that out by watching the Louisville game also, and maybe anything you saw differently from the game against Arizona.
Yeah, so my notes here, and there are a lot of them. So in general, I was a little bit worried. So baseline look first. Definitely a guy that we have to take seriously in 2025.
Yep.
Like 100% a player that like really could end up being a 2025 first round pick. I don't know if, and I say that just insofar as I think there's a fairly decent chance that he is one of the 30 best prospects in this class. Based off of where his game is right now, I actually don't know if it would be best for him if he came out this year, especially given just like the advent of NIL. Like this kid is 100% like $1 million player wherever he goes next year. Okay. So a couple of quick notes in terms of what I had questions about. In ball screens, Arizona, especially early in the game, had a tendency to put two on the ball. And I didn't feel like he handled blitzes all that well. I felt like you could kind of make him pick up the ball early. In general, I feel like he picks up the ball a little bit early right now. in that like he can be frustrated with, size and length and like guys coming at him in a real way. Definitely more of a jump passer, and definitely a guy that like really needs, like, it feels like two hands on the ball to make passes. Like in those two games, I don't think I saw like a real true like live dribble, like one-handed pass where he's, creating and, generating like a look for a guy. He had a couple of nice moments. Like he had one, I think, against Arizona in the second half where he would like, I think coming off of like a screen, caught the ball at the top of the key, got downhill, Euro stepped around a shooter, forced the help in from the corner, and then put two hands on the ball and kicked it out. Right. Like that's really good. Like that's stuff that like I'm very comfortable with. I felt like his pickups were pretty far from the rim. He did utilize real extension and length to be able to finish, but I didn't feel like he was necessarily like a particularly explosive vertical finisher. I didn't feel like there were moments where like when he got ahead of steam, he felt like he had real downhill force.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he necessarily like generates that from a standstill either. In fact, I think he really doesn't. So I wonder if like another year just physically would really help him. I actually like the pull-up shot a little bit more than I like the catch and shoot shot.
Okay.
His catch and shoot jumper takes forever to get off right now.
So
He has like a very elongated dip. He brings it up here, and then like the release looks really clean, but it just feels like it takes forever, and those windows close way quicker in the NBA.
So I was interested to see if you would bring that up. I didn't mention, I thought the mechanics looked good, but yeah, I thought the catch and shoot was super slow.
Yeah. There's like some suddenness and shiftiness when he's like downhill driving in a straight line. I don't know that I saw like, crazy right to left. He had a couple of push crosses that I thought were pretty interesting. But not like consistent, like super shifty right to left, right? It was more like, okay, I'm downhill. I'm going to go like, Euro around a guy, or I'm going to like have a nice little inside out dribble and kind of get him a little bit off balance in terms of change of pace and then go. Definitely a guy worth looking at. Definitely a guy that might be a 2025. I don't know that I want to like predict what exactly he is yet. I think he is a top 50 prospect. Like I didn't have him in my top 50 in the big board I released earlier this week, because I'd only watched the Louisville game at that point, and he had like 10 points and 4 turnovers, and like it just wasn't his best game, right? I do think he is a top 50 kid. I just am I'm going to be a little bit more patient with him, because the other piece of the equation with him is he reclassified up, and he is I think he just turned 18 in October maybe, and ended up going to Oklahoma because Oklahoma had like this amazing opportunity for him to get to handle the ball all the time. The other piece of it I will mention with him and with Oklahoma too is that I fucking love watching that team. Like they are super unselfish, and he's a big piece of this. This is almost the thing I love most about him. He just swings the ball so quick. He processes it really, really well off the catch. The ball doesn't really stick with him at all. He's just moving it. That is awesome. That's really what I like to see. But I want to see more before I like really dive in and say like, hey, this is who this guy is.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I'm with you there.
Okay. The next guy that I got the second most questions on, what range do you see Derik Queen going in? He's been dominant, but it's a weird NBA fit. Derik Queen currently plays for the Maryland Terrapins. He was a part of the awesome Montverde team that had Cooper Flagg, Asa Newell, Liam McNeely, him,
Rob Wright.
Rob Wright was on that team. So he's been like a well-known commodity, as a player here for a minute. And he's one of those dudes where like basically wherever he goes, he just kind of kicks ass. Like there's just not another way to put it. Like he's always super productive. So far this year, he's averaging 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists as a 6'10" center, shooting 61% from the field, 77% from the line. if you look at his shooting ability, like he has these goofy ass, like, fadeaways from 18 feet and has real touch around the basket. I hate him on defense. I do not enjoy watching him on defense right now. The effort in terms of like rotations and weak side rotations is just not there. It's not good enough. It needs to get better. I thought that in the few games I've watched this year already, he struggled a bit with switches. And it makes sense. Like, he's clearly gotten into better shape. I think he was like 260 pounds or so at Montverde. Maryland lists him right now at like 245, and it looks like he's in way better shape than what he was previously. He's somewhere, this is the continuum of when people ask me about him, this is the continuum I've been saying. He's somewhere on the Vernon Carey, Nikola Vucevic, Alperen Şengün continuum of player. And I don't know where he falls yet on that continuum. But the thing that I would like press to like people around Derik Queen is like, he needs to defend. Like, he needs to start showing like real capability on defense, because that's where it will become a real question. The difference between him and Şengün is like, Şengün was literally the fucking MVP of the Turkish league as a 18-year-old. Like, Derik Queen's really good. He's not that yet.
Yeah.
So I had him at 38 on the board. I would say anywhere for me from like 18 to 40, 20 to 40 feels right now. But I will admit this in myself before I let you go. This is just not a player type that I particularly love. He doesn't seem super long. The defense is like a real question. I just think it's really hard to build around centers in the NBA that struggle this much defensively in the ways that he does.
Yeah. I mean, I have it in my notes. I just kind of have to get past kind of this archetype, how it looks. I think the best compliment I can give him defensively is I thought he had decent communication. Like, I think he sees things well, but I didn't think for him being a big, his presence was felt a whole lot. I mean, he averages over a steal and a block, but I just didn't think you felt his presence on that end of the floor. How good do you think the passing is? Because to me, like, that's got to be a huge part of the offensive pitch, because this isn't a floor spacing big. This is a like kind of skilled in his way. Yeah. Is he a playmaker at that level? Like, I thought that's where you were going whenever you were talking about Şengün. I think he has soft touch. I think he can get downhill a little bit. Like, I think he's skilled in that way. Is he a big time passer? Like, that I'm kind of asking myself. I have that in my notes that as I watch him, I want to decide, do I think he's a big time passer, operate DHOs, run the offense through him at the high post? Does he have that type of ability as a passer?
I think yes is my answer. And part of this goes back to like the high school tape. I think he showed like a lot in the high school tape of this, because I know that you've watched a lot of those Montverde games too.
Yep.
Like I thought his passing ability, like he would hit McNeely like all the time.
Yeah.
Like for open threes, it felt like. I think yes. And I actually do think he moves pretty well on, like, he passes pretty well on the move as well. That's like a pretty impressive skill set for me, is like he will catch, take a step on a euro, and then like throw a kick out. The big skill with him is the footwork is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like the footwork for a guy this size is incredible. It's absolutely elite. But is it good enough to like really, carry an offense? Like, can he be the best offensive player, the second best offensive player on the court? Because that's really what he probably has to be. Like, Nikola Vucevic right now is averaging 22, 11 and shooting like 60, 50, 85 or whatever, and has been unbelievable. It hasn't led to wins.
Yeah.
And like, you can talk about Chicago not being like particularly talented, but like that team has him, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, like they have some vets on that team, like around them. If that skill set was really valuable, I feel like they would actually probably be, closer to 500 than 9-13 with the 26th best defense in the league.
The Josh
So
Giddey disrespect, Sam. Didn't bring up Josh Giddey.
Giddey as well. So like, here's the thing. I think at 38, I'm probably a touch low on Queen. Because at the end of the day, I do think he will, at the very least, be like a serious bucket getter in second units in the way that like you can see some Nas Reedy outcomes here for him. I don't think he's, man, Nas was pretty heavy in LSU though too. But it a bit like he's one where it's really going to depend on like whatever you think the intel is in terms of like, is he going to continue to get into like, is he going to be willing to get into elite shape all the time?
Yeah.
That's what it'll come down to with him. If the answer is yes to that, then, first round pick for sure, probably, top 20 pick. If you find out that the intel is really good, if it's more questionable, and this isn't a statement on it one way or another, because I haven't dug into it yet. If it's not that, then there are questions, I think, about Derik Queen.
I actually wondered about how in shape he was early in the year when these games I watched, because it seemed like his rotations were very short. Like they would play him for a few minutes and they take him out for a few, then they play him a few. Maybe that's just how they wanted to play him. Maybe that's how he wanted to play. Just looking at the game logs recently, the amount of minutes he's played, it doesn't seem like that's been the case as much. So maybe it just took him, maybe he wasn't crazy out of shape or whatever. Like it was just something I had in my notes that I wanted to know. I have him at 33 on my board for right now. I'm very much struggling in this range to rank these guys from kind of the range you said, 18 to 40, 20 to 40. And I like the names. The order I don't love as much. So he's right there in the mix. And as you mentioned, he could easily move up into the first round.
Yeah, I think that I would probably have him in the top 30 at this point, but I would like to see real defensive improvement. It's like I'm comfortable taking a backup center at 25 or whatever is the thing.
Yeah.
So like if I get a really good backup center who I know can really play, I'm good with that. So I think he can at least do that. Like I think he will be so good offensively at that level, like as a backup big, that you can be pretty comfortable with him. The other thing though about this is that these guys that produce big numbers tend to get overpaid in their careers. And that's great for Derik. I'm really excited for Derik, but if I'm considering it in a different way, I don't know how enthused I would be about that. Okay. 2 questions on the top of the draft that should go relatively quickly. Based on what you've seen so far this season, how many of these prospects do you project would have been picked before Zachary Rissache at number 1 overall?
4, 5, 4, 5.
I would say 5 for me.
Kasparis.
I don't know that everybody is there on Kasparis in the way that I am. I think I feel comfortable right now saying 4.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's the same 4 with the same 5th then, right?
Yeah.
Cooper, Ace, Egor, Dylan, Kasparis. I don't know that I would be there on Kasparis. I was also higher on Rissache than a lot of people. So I think I'll cut it off at 4 right now.
Yep. I think the answer is 4 here. And in that vein, the next question is, where are we at? From This Is Jason, do you think the gap between number 1 and number 4 is very large right now? There are 4 to 6 dudes at the top of this draft that seem fairly close to me. I mean, Bryce, you can answer that first. I feel like I've answered a bunch of them first.
I don't think it's large. No, I don't think so. Not right now. I think it could matter based on what you need. So we said it earlier, right? Like we still think Cooper Flagg is probably the number 1 pick for almost all 30 teams. So I think in that way it answers it. Am I like, I'm not crazy upset like if I end up at 3, but it also depends on my team needs. Like I think if I already have a point guard and Cooper goes 1 and Ace goes 2 and I don't feel like I can, bring Egor or Dylan into the fold, then that may feel a little bit different. Again, I have a cutoff at 4 though, so I wouldn't say there are 4 to 6 dudes right now for me.
Yeah, I would say 4.
I would say 4, and I think Cooper's a half tier above the other 3 for right now. So I guess maybe that's where the gap is a little bit more, is just Cooper between the next group.
Yeah. So like, yes, all of these guys would have gone number 1 last year to me.
Yep.
Between 1 and 4. And yes, you and I in general on this show have been pumping the brakes on like, hey, Cooper is really good and we love Cooper, but like he's not like a generational like Wemby. He's not that guy, right? He's just
he was even what like Zion would have been if Zion would have never gotten hurt.
Correct. Like he is not a Zion level prospect.
Yeah.
He's really good. He's amazing. But like he's not that level. He's a really good, like to me, solid like tier 1 prospect to me. And these other guys, like a couple of them could end up in that boat. A couple of them might not. Right. So to your point, I think a half tier break is probably right, but I would be very happy to end up in the top 4 of this draft if I was a fan of a team.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. This will be a quick one. I don't see Hunter Dickinson on any draft mocks. I know he's old, but shouldn't someone spend a 2nd round pick on a skilled big like him? I think he has 0 chance to defend in the NBA. Just point blank.
I'm with you as well. Listen. I grew up a KU fan. There's still a little bit of that. There's not a whole lot left. There's a little bit with, so here's a more interesting question, Sam. Chris, my buddy, I was with him for Thanksgiving, the Chiefs game.
Yeah.
He said, Bryce, is KU really a national title contender? When's the last national title champion that didn't have a 1st round pick? And he doesn't think KU has a 1st round pick. And I agree with him. Like, who's the best pro prospect on Kansas?
Who is the best pro prospect on Kansas? That's a great question, Bryce. I did not think about that coming into this. I would say it's probably Flory.
Is it still? I'd say it was Flory coming into the year. I just didn't. Is it still Flory?
Probably. I think Flory would still be my answer. Yeah. I mean, like I'll hear out if you really think that like AJ Storr can learn to pass, or if you think KJ Adams never going in the 1st round though. So like that's the point of your question. I don't think Rylan Griffin's going in the 1st round from what I know. I don't see a 1st round pick. That's for sure.
I mean, so if you just like Connecticut had 1st round picks on the team.
Kansas in 22 had
Christian,
not the Udoka season.
No,
it's the Agbaji season.
They had Christian Brown.
Agbaji is the one.
Agbaji.
Baylor had Davion Mitchell.
The year before didn't have one.
Yeah.
Did the Virginia team have a 1st round pick?
DeAndre Hunter.
I mean, I think he said lottery picks whenever he said it to me, and like, I don't know that held up. And then like this Villanova team is the Nova Knicks were for a little while.
I mean, they still had Bridges on that team.
Yeah. And then Brunson and DiVincenzo also. North Carolina.
Justin Jackson.
Like, so that was the one that we got to. That North Carolina team was like, oh, maybe this breaks it. But even though he didn't pan out.
Yeah. Mikhail for that 2016 Villanova team, but also Josh Hart on that team. Duke in 15 is all of the
Okafor, Justice Winslow.
Yeah, all of those guys. just all of them. Connecticut in 14 is a weird one. That could actually be the answer. But Shabazz went in the 1st round.
Yeah.
But like, I think if we were looking at that Connecticut team at this point in the season, they would not have had a 1st round pick. You know what I'm saying? Like in December 2013, we would not have seen Shabazz Napier as a 1st round pick. So like
that run put him as a 1st round pick.
Maybe that's the team.
Did the Louisville
that we
team the
can
year
talk about.
before not have one either?
They had Gorgie Jang.
Jang. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And then Kentucky the year before was littered with 2011 Connecticut was Kemba. 2010 Duke, I think, had a few of them, right? Because they had maybe they didn't.
Singler? Where did
they had young Mason Plumlee on that team. They did have Singler on that team. Singler went in the second round.
Second round, yeah. 33rd overall. I thought it was close.
This actually might be the team for what it's worth. 2010 Duke.
Yeah.
Because Plumlee could be like the equivalent of like Flory this year, where like younger guy maybe becomes a first round pick down the road.
Yeah. I don't know. It was interesting.
Yeah.
So
actually, now that I think about it, Nolan Smith went 21st overall that year.
Oh, okay.
But still, regardless, like,
okay.
Look, with Kansas, like I'm in wait and see mode a little bit more than some other people are. I think.
And to that point, if Kansas wins a national championship, there's a chance one of those guys plays themselves into a first round pick based off how they play in the Big 12 tournament and the NCAA tournament. I don't think it's Hunter Dickinson, but maybe Storr does figure it out, or Rylan Griffin gets on a crazy hot streak from 3, or something like that happens.
Yep.
Maybe DeJuan just goes crazy and show, like, I'm not a DeJuan Harris guy, but maybe as an NBA player, maybe he just shows this crazy, like, lead guard, something. Like, I think he's too skinny for that to ever happen. Maybe that is the path to it. I don't think they have a first round pick. I don't think Hunter Dickinson's an NBA player.
Yeah, I don't either. From Was David over at Blue Sky, what do you think Egor Demin's ceiling can be? So I've now watched both of the games where Egor was like supposed to have struggled in. The Ole Miss game, I just like disagree. I will just say that I disagree with people that say he struggled. He should have had, like, I think I counted 9 or 10. He had 9 or 10 potential assists in the first half of that game. And BYU, I think, converted 2 of them. So, like, if he ends that game at, I think he had 16 points and 4 assists. If he ends that game with like 16 points, 8 or 9 assists, which wouldn't even have been the extent of his potential assists, we just look at that game totally differently. And I think that process bore itself out. The Providence game is one where, like, okay, I get why people are a little bit worried. What I will say, though, when I talk to people that were at that game, they seem to be of the opinion that he struggled to deal with the ball pressure. I think he didn't deal with the pressure when he got like these post-up opportunities, and he didn't often go and like live in the paint in this game. But I also didn't really think that like the ball pressure bothered him a ton. I thought it was more that he just missed shots. Like, he missed like 3 or 4 wide open threes and missed like a wide open mid-range pull up and missed like 3 shots at the rim. And like, still, even though he was like 0 for 7 in the first half, I think he still had 6 points because he got to the line 3 times. Again, it wasn't a good performance by any stretch of the imagination, but he also had, I think I counted like 6 or 7 potential assists in the first half of that game too. And they converted, I think, 2 of them. So am I being like a bit of an apologist? Like, maybe, but he still flashed some things in that game, like as a passer and playmaker, where I was like, I'm pretty good with this. And this still looks the way it's supposed to look to me in terms of being like a top 5 guy. It's just whether or not he can score. And that was the question for me coming into the year. So like seeing a game like that where he fails, like as a scorer, basically, that's definitely a sign where I'm like, I want to see what that looks like moving forward. But he shot it well coming into that game. So I'm like a little bit higher on it in the aggregate than I was. The thing is that like the passing and the playmaking still held up like in every way, shape, and form to me.
Yeah, like the question brings up Cade Cunningham. I think as prospects, Cade was, I don't know, I feel like Cade was more of a scorer in college. And maybe there's some more questions around his passing where, I mean, I think Egor is a better passer as a prospect than what Cade was. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I don't even think it's close.
Yeah. So
Jaeger is going to enter the NBA, in my opinion, is like one of the 12 best passers in the league.
So
like, it might be higher than that. That's a ballpark, but like he's going to enter the NBA as just like a totally super high level passer.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like assists per game for NBA, NBA. Like I can't find the right name that makes sense. But like I think his ceiling is just like go ahead.
I'll give you the name that I've been using with people.
Okay.
I think he's like 6'9" Halliburton.
Okay.
And the reason I say that, Halliburton's a way better shooter than he is. And that's the swing here.
Yeah.
Again, like Halliburton has not made shots this year. Halliburton has not been a super valuable player this year, frankly. When he made shots last year, he was one of the 6 or 7 most valuable players in the league, right? So Halliburton is a much, much, much better bet to shoot than Jaeger. Jaeger's going to have to shoot it. But if we're talking like pure ceiling outcome here, if Jaeger shoots it, that's what this is. Like he is a big, athletic, 6'9" Halliburton. Like Mr. Ray in the comments brings up, he's closer to Giddey than Halliburton. He's like kind of in the middle of the two to me, because he's like, what people don't get about Jaeger, he's way more athletic than Josh Giddey. Like so much more athletic than Josh Giddey. He is way more fluid. He's more explosive. Like it's a different deal with him comparatively. To me, it's more like his handle's a little high, much like Josh's is. But like he's definitely a better athlete in terms of like getting downhill, being able to leap, being able to finish above the rim, being able to consistently separate downhill. Like he's way different to me than Giddey as an athlete.
And and to your point, he has shot the ball well, even with whatever the most recent game where he didn't. I mean, the percentages are still, 50-39. His free throw percentage actually is the one that may be the most concerning at this point on 25 attempts. So smaller sample, all smaller sample right now. But I mean, he's given reason to believe in the jumper.
Yeah. And to this question here, Jaeger's never shown to be that level of shooter. Trust me. I'm the guy that had him way low on my board, like 25 coming into the year, because I didn't think he could really shoot. The jumper looks way better this year. Like it's a totally different mechanical situation this year. I've broken that down in a video over on the YouTube channel. By all means, go and watch that and go take a look. Totally different jumper than what it is this year. Sometimes it flattens out. That's definitely a concern for me. And he's not the level of shooter that Halliburton is. But my point is, when I make that comparison, is that A, he's clearly showing growth as a shooter. B, we kind of see what Halliburton looks like this year when the shot isn't falling like at a super elite level. Still really like still a valuable player, still like a starting point guard in the NBA, but not an all-star. I think Jaeger's upside is something like that if it really goes right, where Halliburton's like an all NBA guy, but the floor is lower because the shot is just way more volatile than Halliburton's is, even with Halliburton in the middle of a downturn right now.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I still have Jaeger at 2. Like and it's more that I have Cooper, Jaeger, and Dylan all in a single tier myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Ace in like I think I literally put this in the big board thing. I have Ace in a tier titled like 6 question marks right now. Might be great, might not be. I don't know. We shall see. But any other thoughts on this one?
No. Nope.
Okay. 2 more we'll go with. Do you think Cam Jones can play point guard full time in the NBA? No, I think is my answer. But I think there are lineups where he's going to be fine playing at the 1. If you get him like with the right teammates next to like a bigger creator and another guard who can handle, like, you could see a situation where he can play the 1, but yeah, I see him more as like a combo as opposed to a 1.
I agree. I don't know that he breaks down the defense in that way to create. I think he does a good job getting the ball where it needs to be when it needs to be there. I think at times being that primary on-ball guy, he dribbles himself into trouble, which maybe he's still figuring it out, right? Because this wasn't his role last year. So I want to give him credit. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about a guy who I didn't watch in the grassroots because I wasn't doing this when he was coming out of high school. A guy that hasn't shown this level of passing, at least on this volume, and then is now doing it in his senior year. I'm trying to figure out, because this is not the archetype of player I saw him as and had evaluated him as up to this point. It had been a bucket getter. So my answer right now is also no, I don't think so. 20 more game sample of it, an entire year of it, maybe I change my mind.
Yeah, so he showed this a little bit late last year when Kolek went out with his like back injury or whatever. He averaged like 4.5 assists versus like 2.1, 2.2 turnovers per game. Looked fairly comfortable, I thought, being able to control and, play within their offense. I don't know if he like dictates tempo quite as well as like a real point guard. Look, I think that he can be like a situational point guard.
Yeah.
Is like the easiest way to put it, maybe. If he goes to the right team in the right situation, I think the answer is yes, but it's going to be, like kind of hit or miss. And for what it's worth, like AA saying that like he's like 6'5", maybe he's talking about somebody else, but Cam Jones is listed at 6'5". I don't think he's going to come in at 6'5".
I was going to say the first note in my scout is there is no way uppercase he is actually 6'5". Like I just think there's no chance he's actually 6'5". Listen, he rebounds.
I think he comes in at like 6'3", and a half.
He rebounds the ball well. I love that. The assist to turnover ratio is ridiculous right now. He has consistently shot it well from 3 his entire career. Like we talk about volume, we have a 700 sample size at 39%. The free throw percentage being as low as it is weird. This will be an interesting one to track into the NBA. He can really score it, like last year just as a score. So I'm intrigued. I did not anticipate having Cam Jones in my top 30, 35 coming into the year. And so the fact that it is there now is a testament to how he has shown this growth. Real quick, what do you think about this defense? I love his communication. I think he maybe has more communication than any perimeter player I've watched. Feel like he understands defense. Do you think he holds up and is actually impactful on that end? Does he end up being neutral? He is a little bit smaller.
Yeah, my issue was more that I don't think he covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to anything. Like if he's in those like 1-on-2s in the weak side, like I've seen him struggle in those over the years, which is a worry. I do agree with you. Like he seems to be talking out there all the time. Seems like a really smart guy.
Yeah.
But I've never really been a fan of the defense. And on the ball, I don't think he's a great defender either, comparatively to like NBA level.
Got you.
Final question. If the Blazers end up below the number 1 overall pick, how good would Scoot Henderson have to play the rest of the season for the Blazers to not select a point guard in the lottery? So here's what I would say to that. I think that most of the point guards in this class, because they tend to be a bit bigger, actually work with Scoot. So like Egor being 6'8", 6'9", Dylan Harper being 6'5", 6'6", Kasparis being 6'5". These guys that are like, if you want to call Seraph a point guard, like Seraph is like 6'5", right? Most of these guards are big enough to where you can envision a world where, hey, you draft this guy, you can play him next to Scoot, and they can both still get the developmental minutes that they need. Look, I was pretty clear, like even in the preseason, that I didn't really like what I had seen from Scoot early on. I have, continued to be disappointed, like in his gathers and in just like the attention to detail honestly. Like that he still gets to the lane. He still gets to the paint. He is able to create separation. He is excellent in ball screens at doing that. It's the decision making, it's the gathers, it's the places that he ends up putting himself after he gets to the paint that are the problem for me with Scoot. And that to me is like something that I would have hoped took a leap from year 1 to year 2. And you could see it in the preseason that like it still wasn't there yet. So if I was the Blazers, I would be worried about Scoot right now. And this comes from someone who like really, really liked Scoot coming in or as a draft prospect.
Yeah, same. I did as well. I think he'd have to show real improvement right now. I mean, this is where like there's 2 layers to this where I'm more of an Ace Bailey guy. I would just be like, take Ace Bailey and,
sure,
because I'm a Bailey guy. So it's a little bit easier, but let's say they ended up at number 3 and in this world, Cooper's gone, Ace is gone. And the next 3 best players on my board are Egor, Harper, and Kasparis. I wouldn't break tiers because of Scoot, I guess would be my comment on this one, unless he shows some sort of real growth. And I think you bring up the size of those 2 guys that allows you to not just say like, hey, this just puts Scoot on the bench and this can never work together. They can never play together. We just talked about Egor shooting and in terms of it potentially being decent. Harper hasn't shown that as much consistently, but he's a 79% from the free throw line so far. So that hasn't been bad. He's had a couple games where he's hit some threes. Like I think you can make it work and figure it out if you don't want to break tiers. So I wouldn't do that. If they were at 3 and those 3 guys are on the board, I'm not then going to Liam McNeely or, Con Knipple or somebody like that, just because I don't feel like I can draft a point guard.
And I think because those guys are big enough, I agree with you that I wouldn't break tiers. Now, like, I don't know how great I would feel about taking VJ Edgecombe and putting him next to Scoot. Like, that's one where, like, if they ended up like 7th or 8th and he's there, like, that's a trickier one to me. But yeah, I'm with you that, like, I'm at the point where I am making Scoot earn it, like, every game at this point, and like really putting pressure on him. You got to figure this shit out. Yeah. Like, you got to get with it here. You got to like live in the film room. You got to live in the gym, figure out what's going on with your problems, figure out what you're seeing on the court. And you got to make some strides here. They're not going to get like, he's going to be there next year and they're still going to be developing him next year. I can't imagine, unless he like completely bottoms out and craters, I can't imagine a world where they're not going to still be invested in the Scoot Henderson business next year.
The hard part is like the growth just isn't there. Like even statistically, like either the numbers are pretty much the same, like field goal percentage is up a little bit, but the attempts are down, free throw percentage is down, and the attempts, turnovers are down a little bit. Like there's just
it's like game by game for me. It's a roller coaster when I watch him. Like in that game he played, like he's missed, a bunch of the games recently. Like he played one recently against Indiana. And I thought he was great in that game. Like I thought that his tempo was a little bit better. He passed super well. It was against Indiana. Their defense is a sieve, but like that was the kind of game where I was like, okay, like this looks pretty good. I'm excited about this. And he has this, goofy quad injury that he's dealing with. And you have to hope that he can get like fully healthy before he gets back on the court. But like maybe being off the court and like watching a shit ton of tape and like really understanding that, okay, I'm in my second year now and I'm like still really struggling. I have to figure this out. Like whatever it is, maybe, they have to figure out different developmental techniques with him. Maybe it's on him. I'm not in Portland. I don't know. Right. But there are a lot of things that he needs to fix, and he has the tool, like he has physical tools to do it. And part of why, like, I'm not giving up on him at this point is that there are games, and this is what I mean when I say it's a roller coaster. There are games when he shows that he knows what he needs to do, like that Indiana game. I thought the opener this year for Portland, he was pretty good in that game too. There are games where he flashes that he has the ability to be something. It's just way too up and down and way too inconsistent right now.
Yep.
So, okay. Bryce, that's all we got. And we're not doing trivia today. It's just not happening.
I will agree with that decision based on my having not eaten supper yet.
Yeah, I also haven't eaten today. I had a protein shake when I woke up. And also, we're an hour away from the cricket. So I need to get ready for the blood sport that is Australian cricket. And I need to be ready for the announcers to be ready to send these players down to third grade cricket here once they get out, or once the bowlers just do terrible. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen today? It's wild. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, made the move over there as well. Follow either place. Pistons Pulse podcast if you want Pistons content. Got the Substack with game analysis. So again, if your team plays the Pistons, I always have some interesting notes about the opponent as well. You can scroll past all the Detroit content on that one. And otherwise, Game Theory podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. You can read my top 100 rankings. On top of that, go subscribe to Game Theory Sam V on all of your social media platforms: X, Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, whatever you're using, we're using them. GMAC, Andrew Claudio, he is the best and does an amazing job. And I would imagine that he will be back on Sunday because I don't think the Knicks play on Sunday. So you will get to see his lovely face at some point this weekend. Bryce and I will be back on Sunday. There will definitely not be a post-game theory in between that time because I've done 3 of them this week and my body is breaking, folks. So we will be back on Sunday with Bryce. We will figure out a topic in the meantime, but until next time, we'll talk soon.